There it is. We're live.
We're now live.
We are live. Oh, yeah. Nice. Okay. We're late, Dallas.
I know. We don't normally come on this late.
I hope our people don't hold it against us.
We were out doing donuts in the Suburban.
Wait, there's nobody here.
There's 5 people here and 1 thumbs up.
Oh, yeah. 2 thumbs up.
Yeah, they'll all pop in here in a second.
Yeah. So who do you think is going to be the first one? I think George Bonnie. Oh, Mike Smith. Uncle Squirrel, what's happening? George Bonnie's number 3. And Fubar the axe.
Wasn't Mike Smith first last week? I think he was. Somebody was. I think it was Mike Smith.
Might have been Mike Smith. So we're going to have to, next week, we're going to have to see who's going to get up there first. Mike Smith or George Bonnie.
Well, normally it is George Bonnie. Hey, Ari's here.
Ari is here. Oh, okay, wow. They're all just piling in all at once. Donna Win the English, what's happening? Mark Neese, James Elliott, D. Scaglione Coffee, and Entenmann's with AHRA. There you go.
Oh, man.
What are you? Am I boring you?
No. I've just been working pretty hard this week, and it's starting to catch up to me.
I've been working my little tail off.
We're both trying to get ready for Slanted Nationals.
I went through that car. I'm so paranoid now. I've become ultra paranoid, right? So I've gone through that car literally from one end to the other. I've left no stone unturned. I also pulled another 19 ounces out of it, which
19 whole ounces.
19, it's like I lost a washer here or there. You know what I mean? And it added up to 19 ounces. I'm so paranoid at this point. It's just like I took the whole freaking car by the pan down. I checked all the.
Well, have you noticed? I was like, "Hey, I'll let you load it up," right? Like I didn't want
to.
You
don't want to touch the car, right?
Yeah,
you don't want to touch the car. So let's see what happens. I mean, hopefully, I can make it to like the 300-foot mark.
I'm sure it'll make it down the track.
I'm always sure it's going to make it down the track, but it never seems to happen.
John Wilburn said, "Did you check the lower control arm bushings?"
They're good. All little control arm bushings are good. Oh, man.
Brian Brinker said he'll be there Sunday.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Brian McKinnon says he has massive diarrhea.
All right.
Nice.
Don't be there Sunday then.
Warp 21 says Vanilla Ice invented rap. See, I'm not a rap guy. I don't really.
Me either.
Yeah. Pete Mantica, Slanted 6 carry extra cam gear. You mean distributor gear, right?
Do they eat the distributor gears?
Yes. Well, the Slant has almost all of the Slants have a nylon distributor gear. There were some industrial applications that had a steel gear, but all of the factory ones that you find in cars have a nylon gear. Mike Smith, thank you.
Yeah, you get a steel one on yours.
I don't have a steel one.
Yours is nylon?
They're all nylon, yeah. What's up, Tony Dallas? What time does the Slanted National start Sunday? And my 7-year-old says he wants his pick taken with you. Okay.
Yeah, well, it starts, gates open at 10. We get down for some drag racing around noon. They actually have a church right next door, so we got to wait till noon for you to light them all off. But gates open at 10.
Mike and Willow kindly says, I look like a Doobie Brothers guy on 8-track. Doobie Brothers, no, oh God, I mean, not that I have anything against like the Doobie Brothers or anything, but they're just like, they're just way too like soft.
Andrew Justice is asking, what type of heads should he put on a 73 318?
What are you going to do with the car? See, people ask these questions and they're just so vague. What exactly are you trying to accomplish with the car? You have to be more specific when you ask a question like that.
Simmy's Garage says, Uncle Tony, I need your help.
Yes.
I need your
What
advice.
can I do for you?
65 Fury with 904 trans. Front ball and trunnion joint is vibrating bad. Should I convert to a standard U-joint? Have you done this on your cars?
Go to an off-road shop. And they'll hook you up with a setup there. They'll create a slip joint for you.
Mr. Will says we're the Bo and Luke Duke of YouTube.
Okay. Maybe I should try sliding across the table.
Oh, speaking of that, John Schneider's house and his studio got smashed by that hurricane.
I saw that.
Well, if anybody's in the area, go over to John Schneider's studios and give him a hand fixing that place up. One of his General Lee's got smashed. So,
well, somebody just asked me about Freak Daddy 25. Hey, Tony, have you ever seen a 426 Hemi block modified to run wedge heads? Yes, that was a very common thing for NASCAR applications in 1972. Oh, God, I don't remember the year. Somebody who's a NASCAR aficionado would know the year. But they
is that when they piled all the weight on them?
Yeah, they piled a bunch of weight handicaps on the 426. So they started using the wedge block and the wedge, or the Hemi block. They started using wedge heads on the Hemi block, and the Hemi block has those cross-bolted mains, and those are specifically for NASCAR applications. They don't do jack in a drag racing thing, but in NASCAR they keep the caps from walking around. So that was why they used the 426 blocks.
Sustained high RPMs, huh?
Yes.
Oh. Okay, let's see where we're at. Yeah, if you're in the area of wherever John Schneider's studio is at, somewhere in Louisiana, hit him up. Go over
there. DD Speed Shop. When are we going to war, General Tony? Shots have been fired, my brother.
Oh, what was this?
Oh, this whole thing with the piston offset and the West Coast guys and all.
But this is like, the whole flip piston thing is not a new concept.
I had one of them text me yesterday. Right, I had one of these clowns text me yesterday, and they're like, "We need to communicate more." I said, "Did you invite me?" Well, of course I did. No, you didn't. It was this whole back and forth. It's like, I don't want to deal with them. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to deal with them. They're asshats. Done. Over.
Here's Adam Welk. This is the question that's asked every week. Tony, have you considered doing an Australian 265 Hemi? Adam, yes, we have. Get us one. Mail it here. We will thrash the hell out of that thing.
Send it to his place, care of UTG, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, we'll get it. That's probably the most asked question on the Tech Live show.
Joe K, can I order an authentic UTG funnel? You guys seen you go right to Facebook, huh? We just hey Drag Boss, what's happening, man? Did you see the commercial he did on Facebook for the merch ad?
No, I haven't seen one. I saw the latest video.
No, you didn't see the latest video. Wait, it's not the latest video. Hang on, I gotta show Dallas this.
You made a commercial?
Yeah, here. Come on, Kat, you ready? Oh. You got the camera? Come on. We gotta sell some merch. We gotta get on this. I had a brainstorm, right? Come here, watch this. We're gonna sell 1 million of these things. So just film me, right? I'm just gonna do my thing. You gotta show the camera. Oh, it's time to add some oil to the XJ. Let's see.
They can't even see it so far away.
I should have used my Uncle Tony's garage funnel.
It was literally squirting out from above the hood.
Automatic swivel.
Right.
Oh, look how good that was. That's good. That's got it. Straight merch push. Thank you, football. Just put the link to our merch. Randall Black, why are you quoting articles I wrote like 40 years ago? he's Randall Black here is like he's copying he's from an article I did, like a road test on a Buick Grand National or T-Type, whatever the hell it was, back in the middle 80s.
Man, I gotta get me one of them funnels.
Randall Black, 1986. Okay.
You passed Freiberger on I-40 in Tennessee? Altered wheelbase Lincoln with a back seat full of waffles. Oh, that was John Wilburn. I never really met. 5 seconds talked to the guy at 2003 Hot Rod Power Tour, and he asked me about, hey, what do you think about if you had a drag racing event where you went from track to track and it was a week long? And as soon as I began to open my mouth, I'm assuming he must have thought I was going to say something negative, and he just turned and walked away. I'm like, okay, no problem.
Noobs, he did that on the video you uploaded earlier also. I don't even know what's going on there.
Are the Vista Cruisers pretty similar to the sport wagons in regard to the skylights and interior? Yes. The Oldsmobiles and the Buicks were the ones that had the glass roof, the skylight, if you want to call it that.
Mike and Willow kindly just watched it. Tony Papil. Was that brilliant acting, though? I mean, really, seriously. I was like, I was totally in character. Mopar Den says, Steve Magnanti just visited a Mopar junkyard just up the road from me in Rhinebeck, New York. Part of his new Junkyard Coil series. Cool video if you haven't seen it. I haven't seen it, but yeah, he's on it full time now. He's actually supposed to be here in Tennessee. He's going to stay with us for a couple of days, sometime in the middle of the month. But we haven't solidified a date yet. But we're going to be doing a lot of work with Steve. We're equally nerdy. You know what I'm saying? Like we both geek out over the same stuff.
Oh, Steve he definitely knows his stuff. And I mean, like, we did the latest video on AHRA Drag Racing History Channel, and we were okay. At the very beginning we set up guidelines. We're shooting for a 30-minute video, so an hour later I had to stop it. Like, all right, guys, hey, we're done. And then it was like, what do I take out of there? There was nothing to take out. And you brought up a good point. There's so much information to cover in that couple of years that it would literally take 3-4 videos to fully cover.
Here's the problem: if you put me and Steve together on a video project like that, I mean, literally, I mean, we could do a 24-hour marathon and just talk about the specific era because we're both so, you know,
into it. Yeah,
we're both so into it. I'm surprised we didn't start arguing though. You know, because usually, you know, you'll get to a point where it's like
welds, no rivets, welds.
Right, exactly. But we didn't get that far.
Yeah, Jason's Garage. All the Ford Flexes did have an option for a Vista roof. I was kind of impressed by that when I saw it. It makes you think that was Buick and Oldsmobile way ahead of their time.
Mr. Will says, hey guys, are you ready for real car building season? The next few months is when I go into Overdrive. Weather is great in New Jersey. Tony definitely needs videos. You know, yeah, absolutely. You're exactly right. It's car building time. It's the fall, right? September, October, November, and then here in Tennessee, it stays into the 70s, like or so, right up to like the holidays.
It just gets cold.
Like, yeah, and then all of a sudden it's like you just wake up one day and it's like it's below zero, and we get like 2 months of like hardcore winter in like January and February, and then we get back to spring again. So it's like this really isn't bad here in Tennessee.
Zippo Anadoli is asking, can I recommend a choppy cam for a 455 Buick?
Oh man, just cross a couple of plug wires if you're looking for a choppy cam.
Well, but I can recommend. I know the ones that actually So the ones that actually, most of the guys on the Buick groups are going towards now, that used to be the TA 212, and that wasn't very choppy, right? Your 310 is where things start to get choppy. But there's a 284 92H, I think is what the number is. That's the one everybody's gravitating towards now.
If you want choppy, just go to the cam list of whatever it is that they've, right? And just find the one with the smallest LSA. Right, find something that's got like a 106 or something like that.
Take your power assisted brakes off.
Yeah. Use the power brakes, right? Yeah, that's all. Choppy is about LSA. I mean, that's it. It's that simple. You know, you want something that's crazy, 106. You want something that's like just smooth as glass, 114. You know, and then like in between. There's no mystery to choppy. That's it. It's LSA. Smaller number, the choppier. You know, and the higher number, the smoother.
Man, well, you know what was funny when you say about the how Tennessee weather is here? I was literally sanding a hood for my Suburban out in the driveway in like November in shorts.
Yeah.
And the next day I went out and I had to move everything inside because it was too damn cold to work.
Yep. Mike Smith, thinking of running E85 on a blown 340 street strip driven. What's your thoughts? You know what? You see, I'm the wrong person to ask about that, right? Here's my thoughts. Okay, E85 works. It's a fantastic way to make power without detonation you can get a lot out of it. I don't use it. If it's something that's driven on the street, there's only one thing I will ever build an engine for that gets driven on the street, driving on the street, okay, and that's E10, pump gas, 87, 90, 92, whatever, but if I drive it on the street, it's pump gas. Now that doesn't mean that I don't recommend you doing E85, but if you're asking the wrong person, would I do it? Never on a bet, no matter what the circumstance, because I can't reliably get it at every gas station, and I don't know that it's going to always be available. So therefore, I will never build for it. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't. So that's my answer.
Well, what I was noticing here is Tom Muse, who is religiously on a lot of stuff for UTG, says we need more engine families covered. Mopar Buicks are covered well. What about Caddies, Ford Big Blocks, Oldsmobiles? Well, I tell you, if you throw us a Caddy, I'll cover it. How's that? I have not really considered getting anything else because I'm still trying to get rid of my 13 Big Block Buicks.
Hoosiers Garage wants to know if we're discussing pistons tonight. Sure, let's talk pistons.
Yeah. Talk pistons and the most important part about them.
Sunoco non-ethanol. Yeah, but there isn't always a Sunoco station when I want gas. You see, it's that simple. I don't want that kind of complication in my life. So since everything all over the world, right, is the regular stuff is 10%, well, that's what I build for. That's what I tune for. Jag Boss, thank you, man.
Well, he says for lunch tomorrow. He said Kathy is addressed. Well, that's good because I got something I want to send you, Tim. I saw you got a set of C3s the other day on your latest video. And I actually have a set of copper exhaust gaskets or header gaskets that were for C3. But mine is not a C3. Mine is just a Cleveland style exhaust manifold.
I love copper exhaust gaskets.
Oh, they rock. And I'll send them to him. I'm never going to use them.
Ben Treese, what is the worst V8 engine you ever worked on in your life as a mechanic? I'm going to say the North Star. It was just a bad surprise every step of it. I remember the very first one of those I worked on, and it was like the only phrase that kept going through my head was "You got to be kidding me." Right? Just doing anything with them, you got to be kidding me. And then it dawned, and then I realized, well, the only way to actually work on this thing is to drop it the frick out the bottom of the car. And I'm going to say it was a North Star, although I do know that there are worse. And if I sat here long enough, I'm sure something would come to me. But the North Star is the one.
I was always thought that the North Star isn't the North Star like virtually two quad fours?
Well, I mean, the cylinder head is essentially a quad four, but it's a common block, a common crank.
Right. Yeah. I was just thinking it was two quad fours put together is really what it was, but. I've never really worked on one, so I couldn't tell you how bad they are. But the worst
there's a bunch of people agreeing with the North Star thing. Lucas Crockett currently doing a head gasket and timing chain on a North Star. It's a nightmare in the car. Yeah, man. The first one I did was in a car. I did head gaskets on one. This has to be almost 30 years ago, right? Well, no, not 30 years ago. It was probably about 25 years. It was 20 years ago. So it was the first one of them I ever did, and it was like. I just could not believe it. Like the working on that back cylinder, and it was from that point I realized, no, you can't work on this inside the car. You got to drop it out.
Okay, Charles F says soaking a gunked up carb in Pine Sol, does it work?
No.
So I'll tell you how I do it. I was doing a few of them. Like last year when I first met Tony, I had 9 of them, 9 quadrujets, and most of them are pretty much ragged out when you get them and pretty gummed up. What I do is I throw them in kerosene first, and I let them soak for like a day or two, bits and pieces of it in kerosene, and then I throw it in a good carb dip. After that, I clean it off, dry it off, throw it in a carb dip, and then when I'm done with the carb dip, I go after it with carb cleaner.
Well, here's the thing about dipping carburetors. If you've got a carburetor that has clogged passages, and usually the low speed passages, the ones that operate the idle mixture screws and the transition circuit, right? You could soak that thing from now until the absolute end of time, and you will not clear those passages. Like this carburetor will come out sparkling clean, like it just came from the foundry, right? But those passages inside the car, inside the carburetor, inside the meter and block, or inside the boosters, if you're doing an Edelbrock or a Carter style, will still be clogged. So soaking it is absolutely not a way to repair or rejuvenate a carburetor. Do it because you want to make it look pretty. Don't do it because you're trying to fix a problem.
So Tyrone Chillafoot's asking, how are flathead Fords to work on? Any experience? Simple. Real simple. It's almost like Volkswagen Buggish, right? Simple.
Tom Muse says sonic bath cleaners are awesome. Yes, they are, but they will not clear those passages.
You know what I use on them passages? It took me forever to figure something out. I was trying to find a gauge of wire that would fit in everything. And you got these super tiny passages with 90-degree turns and stuff like that. I went inside, I took the twisty tie off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And ram her down in there. Man, does it do a good job.
Yep. The easy. So I used to do that, right? And then it dawned on me: if you take the bristle out of a wire brush, just take a needle nose plier, grab one bristle out of a wire brush, pull it out, straighten it out, and it's perfect to get through those passages.
Is it really? Okay.
But yeah, those twist ties work great.
Oh my gosh. Okay, Mr. Classic Car Enthusiast. I have a very high lift, very soft cam for my Buick 215, 480 thou lift, 220 duration.
That's a high lift.
No, well, that's pretty high for a Buick, but you generally when they get over 500 is when it's high. But 111.
Well, 220 is advertised, right? And 111, yeah. I mean,
that actually should run pretty good right there.
That's just a
mid-range cam.
That's as middle of the road as you could possibly get on a camshaft. You won't have any problem with that at all. Oh, it's Kathy. Hi, Dallas and everybody. Tony, you guys look hazy. Maybe clean the camera. Is it smudge red show? Yeah. Caitlin was playing with the camera. I guess she got her fingerprints all over it.
All right. So did we just broadcast?
Oh yeah, look at that.
Is it better? Am I good right there?
Come up just a hair. Bing. Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Thanks for the heads up, Kat. My granddaughter Caitlin was in here. She was messing around with everything, so I guess she got her fingerprints all over the camera. Guitar strings, no, they're not stiff enough.
They're hotboxing the garage. No, we're actually in the studio. We're in the HRA studio.
Okay. Bruce W., can you please explain torque to yield bolts? Stop. No. I find them to be so offensive. I don't even want to recognize that they exist.
So he's asking, though, why they have them. Because they cheaped out.
Right.
They save 1 cent per bolt, and you end up eating it. What tools do you need? Oh, it's generally an angle indicator.
Right, angle indicator. Because what you're doing is you go to a certain value, and then you're measuring the amount of twist from that point. And they're really, honestly, they are completely pointless. Completely pointless.
You say, are they really reusable? Or are they really not reusable? No, throw them in the trash. I've tried reuse them, and this is a mess. Where, when is torque to yield used, and why? Okay, so it's anything from about like 1994 on up is what I've noticed. That's when they kind of started showing up. 302 Fords was the first thing I ever seen that had them. And they came, when you bought the head gasket set from Ford, it came with the set of the bolts. And I'm like, why the hell is these freaking head gaskets so expensive? You know, and then, oh, wait, it has a set of torque to yield head bolts. And, I didn't think nothing of it. Oh, this is how they all are. So here I was with older motors from like the 80s, taking them out, throwing them away, put torque to yields in them. And
head bolts were traditionally an extremely high quality steel, or high carbon steel, almost like chromoly, right? A head bolt. And it costs a lot of money, when you're making, almost 1 billion of them, let's just say, to do a run of an engine over the course of a year or so. You're talking about a substantial amount of money. So instead, they just make them out of like a not mild steel, but a plain steel, but a much lesser quality metal. So now it's like torque, yield, and throw them away.
So Scott W says, "Hey, Uncle Tony, thanks for the exhaust manifold video. It helped me out." And so I'll finish this way. He helped me out, not strip the bolts in the block with your wizardry techniques.
I'm glad I helped.
Here's what's interesting. I saw you were doing those videos, and I remember I told you I've become a wizard at because Buicks are all like the FE4. They got the open back.
Right. I didn't realize. I should have said Buick, but it just didn't pop in my head.
Well, no, it doesn't matter. But I've become a freaking wizard at pulling these things out. There's a guy showed me a trick, and what I think would be kind of cool. I bring a Buick in here at head, and it'll probably have 4 or 5 broken off bolts,
right,
which is normal. I'll pull them all out, and it's like there's no way you're going to get them out if you looked at them and you're thinking easy outs and drill them and then retap it. Nope, I probably won't even have to do that to one of them. Okay, I got it all kind of narrowed down. I got a good technique with it.
What's the technique?
Okay, so what I found is I normally, instead of even trying to take the bolts off anymore, I get a chisel and break the head off. Right. Okay. And I just pull it off because it leaves you some stud to actually attach something to. Okay. Then I'll clean it up real good with a wire wheel, and I'll put a lug nut on it. I'll slide the lug nut over it, and I'll weld the lug nut to that
I did that video already.
Then I'll take a candle, a small birthday candle, and put it on the back hole.
Okay.
Right? What happens is that wax will melt, and it wicks to the hottest point, which is the head of the bolt, right? So it pulls it wicks all of that wax up through the threads. But it works pretty good. And then with the bigger lug nut on there, it gives you something to grip onto that you can really put some steam on it. Now, if you break it off flush, what I've also found is when you break it off flush, you get your lug nut, or you find a smaller nut that's just a little bit bigger, and you lay it right over the hole, and you weld it right to the nut. You weld the bolt right to the nut. Whatever's left.
If you go to this channel and you go back to the very first video that we did, that was it.
Oh, really? Removing broken head
welding nuts to broken bolts. Huh. So the very first published video that we did on this channel, which should be 3 years ago this week. Like we listed the channel, we made the channel sometime in 2017, but never used it. And then 3 years ago this week is when we posted our first video, and that was it.
Huh. Bruce W. He's asking, at Uncle Tony's garage, are torque to yield only used as head bolts or big ends and mains? No, they're not on the mains or the rods, but I've seen them on intake manifold, I've seen them on timing cover, and I've seen them on head bolts. I haven't seen them anywhere else.
Ruckwart says Project Farm tested the candle wax and it didn't do well. Project Farm is a great channel. He really goes all out. I've heard it both ways. I mean, it may not have worked in his situation, but evidently it works in his situation. They're all different. But that's not taking anything away from Project Farm. He's like the go-to.
Well, this is his name's been brought up a lot. Yeah. He must have some clout to what he's doing. Yeah. But the candle wax has worked well for me.
Adrenaline Channel, is Uncle Tony going to debate the camera Fords with Megs? Uncle T don't like them, and Megs is a big fan. I don't have to debate it. I could just state the fact that they don't exist anywhere in the world, right? They don't exist other than as a novelty. They don't have a place in racing, and therefore, by their own absence, there's no debate. There's no debate.
So, did you see the live with Andy Wood? And he had pro stock racer. I can't remember his name.
Sam Auxier.
Sam Auxier, yeah. And he was talking about when he was running the cameras and how much he liked the cameras. And then he talked about how much of a turd the 429 shotgun motor was, right? And it was like it was hands down no comparison. Now, is it any better than a Hemi? I have no idea.
Well, I mean, okay, so here's the answer. Okay, for anybody who's curious, all right. So here, I'll give you the bottom line. I'll give you the bottom line. Tune in to Street Outlaws, right, or No Prep Kings, or any of these shows. Okay,
who's running a sock motor?
Right, exactly. Okay, these guys run the most hardcore most exotic internal combustion engines on Earth. Okay, I mean, this is like no expense spared, no nothing spared. It's like if it will get the job done, right, they will do it. They will go there. Show me the camera. Show me one camera. Show me the Boss 429. Show me one Boss 429. Right? There's zero of them. There's less than zero of them. They don't even like nothing. Okay,
nobody's even thought about running them.
Right, what you find is big block Chevy, derivatives, and 426 Hemis. That's it. That's done.
Well, he's got Pontiac. You got your one lonesome Pontiac in there.
Okay, yeah. That's right. You got Big Chief with his Butler motor, which is only a 481 cubic inch engine. If he's still running that, I don't know.
I don't know if he is,
but it's 481 inches on nitro. So it's like, okay, you gotta give it some there, but this is what I'm saying. It's like if the Camry had any value as an actual engine, you would see it there, and it doesn't exist.
Maybe we need to make it that way.
What's that?
We show up with something totally exotic.
Oh, Caleb Morton runs a Boss Ford motor on a Pro Charger. You're right. When I said there's no Boss motors, yeah, there are Boss motors out there. There's no cameras. There's no cameras.
Predator carbs. Predator carbs are hard to use, aren't they? I'm pretty certain that they're pretty tough to.
Yeah, that's another one. Mike Smith, are you still doing a dual point video this week? So probably, yes. Probably.
Oh, hold on. There's a good one right there. Okay, Rusty Turbo's Garage. What are your thoughts on reground cams and lifters using your old cores because new cam blanks seem to be junk? That's how they used to do them back in the day.
Right.
Was you took them your old cam and they regrind it.
Everything was a regrind. The only issue I see with a regrind is by nature of the machining that's done, you're reducing the base circle. So you're gonna have to spring for a set of push rods.
Your lifters, you might have to get custom lifters if they go too far.
Well, if they recondition the lifters, that you take a material off the bottom of that too. So yeah, it really. So you got to add the extra steps of measuring and coming up with the right push rod length, and then ordering a set of push rods for it. That's about the only drawback I see to using regrind.
Adrenaline Channel says, to be fair, oh dang it, where was that? To be fair, the Camry was made to compete in NASCAR. NASCAR said no, so Ford gave them to the drag racers. So there isn't as many cameras. So debate with Mags.
Well, Jesus, how many of the engines do you think that they're using in competition today came from the assembly line? Right? They didn't. Right? It's a design that originated on the assembly line, but it has zero to do with it. So if the Camry had any value, somebody would make a set of billet Camry heads and a billet Camry everything, and they'd go out and run them. But they don't. Nobody uses them. Why don't anybody use them? Because it has no value. And I have a conspiracy.
I like your conspiracy theory. This is the same one you threw out last week, right?
I'm going to throw it out there. People say that NASCAR outlawed the Camry because they said it was going too far. But I have a hunch. My feeling, my conspiracy idea here is that somebody at Ford actually paid NASCAR to make that announcement. Because they probably had this thing running on a fucking dyno. They probably put it through a tester and said, it's no better than the 426 Hemi. It's not doing any better than the 426 Hemi. We can't make it do better than the 426 Hemi. What do? We already made these announcements. The whole world is expecting this engine. Quick. Go get your buddy at NASCAR, slip him a couple of bucks and tell him, no, we're going to outlaw this thing. I am certain that's what actually happened.
Wasn't aware the Camry used a short cam to run the Dizzy and oil pump. Oh yeah.
Well, it uses a stub, right? It's just a stub. It's just a cam it's the first two.
It just goes to the first journals.
Right, the first two journals of the cam. Michael Thompson, but they have cameras. They're called Coyotes now. Yeah, and it's a good small displacement engine. But when you get to the outer ranges, when you get to the outer limits of performance, they don't exist there either.
Yeah, what's the biggest one I've seen is that 6.2 that was a trial and error kind of piece. Mm-hmm. And that thing never went anywhere. Like I never saw an article after it showed. Well, there was, so what, about 2010 maybe they were doing that? Is that right? 2008 maybe? It showed up in a magazine. It had that 6.2 camera motor in somebody's Fox body, and they were testing it. I never saw another article about the thing. So it makes me wonder, what did they find?
Let's see.
How many feet of timing chain is too many feet? Depends what you're doing.
Tom Hughes, and the mod motors get smoked by equally built push-rod engines, period. Yeah.
So Paul Cabazola is asking, do you think regrind cams should be nitride coated?
Yes.
They're all come nitrided when you get them originally, I think, don't they? Or no, that's something you got to ask for now.
You shouldn't have to ask for it. That's the surface of the cam has to be hardened.
It should be hardened. And I know factory stuff was all hardened from the factory. Like 10 thousandths down, right?
Kevin Cowan says he's got a 2013 Coyote powered Mustang that runs low 12s on stock street tires. Yeah, listen, I'm not saying that it isn't a good engine for that purpose, right? In other words, like, as a street and strip performance engine, yeah, they're fine, they're great, there's no problem. But we're talking about like 427 camera territory. We're talking about the upper echelon battle between the Camry, the 426 Hemi, the Boss 429, and the big block Chevy. That's what we're talking about. That engine does not fit into that category.
So Mr. Will brings up a point here. Uncle Tony in Dallas, follow up to the madness of the classic car market right now. The 72 LeSabre convertible I sold last week, a friend literally saw it for sale on Facebook Marketplace for double what I sold it for. Where does it end?
It's not going to end. It's going to get crazier.
You should have doubled down right then. Whatever you felt was a fair price, double it and then ask for that. You might get it, but then you got to try to find another car.
Ben Treese, I think it was a big mistake that Chrysler Corporation did not make. This is a factory option of offering the 426 cubic inch Hemi V8 and the Chrysler New Yorker and Chrysler Newport 300. It was a terrible motor for that application because originally it was a solid lifter motor. They're soft downstairs, right? It's got a big port. It's a relatively lazy motor. Unless you've ever driven a street Hemi, I can't really explain to you how they feel. They're not. If you get in a stock street Hemi car, right, and you drive, it feels like a 383 two barrel is what it feels like, right? Until you're actually in it and the motor is over 3,500 RPM or so. They're sluggish. They're just if you put.
But don't they come on like hard at like 2,500? They're like freight train hard.
A little harder, 3,500 or so.
Oh, 3,500.
Yeah, but
that high.
But the thing is now, if you put in a heavy car,
right.
You put in a 5,000 pound car now, right? Because it got people and everything, and you got to go up a driveway. You know what I mean? Or up an incline. You know, you need a loose converter, and the motor's going to be struggling to move this mass up there because it's not what it was designed for. Everything is too big.
Well, and that's where people today the stuff the shit that they sell at the dealership just gets me, right? Because they'll say, okay, this V6 makes 310 foot-pounds of torque, and you're like 310 foot-pounds of torque, and you go look at this V6, and it's like 310 foot-pounds of torque at 4,600.
Right.
Who the fuck drives there going down
Exactly.
the road, right? Like stop and go traffic. I'm not at 4,600. You know, I mean, I'd like to. That'd be fun, but I mean, no one drives there, so that makes the engine impractical. That's why if you look at some of the older engines that everyone, scoffs at for emissions and blah, 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 they'd make 310 foot-pounds of torque at 2,200, right? That's usable torque. That's drivable torque.
James Martin says, I think Ed Pink remarked the cameras. He just turned 90, actually. I just saw his 90th birthday. They just saw that Ed Pink remarked that cameras were cracking their blocks once they started running nitro, where the Hemis would stay together. The camera has a much smaller main structure, main saddle. Okay, so
it's based off the FE, right?
It's based off the FE, right? So the camera is just a side orbital block. There's no There's nothing special about it. But the FE motor has the area between the top of the main journal, okay, the top of the main bearing and the bottom of the cam is a very thin, not well supported area. Okay, and that's where the stresses are really on a nitro motor or anything that gets into serious detonation. That's where a block will crack. If you ever see like a 302 Ford, a lot of people split 302 Fords right down the middle, and that's because of that area right there, that area between the top of the main bearing and the bottom of the cam bearing, right? That's where the split happens, and so the 426 Hemi, based on the B motor, the RB motor, I should say, has more meat in that webbing.
Well, that block is actually taller right there, right? That's where it's got a pretty good spread right there.
No, it's about this. The distance between is about the same. In fact, if anything, it's a little bit smaller.
Really,
it's a little bit
but it's just beefier.
It's stockier, right? Stockier.
Yeah, and that was the FE. So what's funny about the 427 Cammer is just the last evolution of the FE engine, which the first FE was what, the 352, the 332 maybe. It was like 1952, right? The engines didn't make 700 horsepower.
No, it was actually the FE came about. You're talking about the Y block.
Well, I'm thinking, what was the very first FE? Was it the 352?
56. 1950s. Was it? It was either 1956 or 1957.
But the engines at that point didn't make this kind of power, and nobody had ever intended.
Right,
yeah, they had never intended to do that. And I think, in my personal opinion, had they never had the Cammer, I probably would have been happy with that, because the 427, in my personal opinion, FE 427 was a freaking badass wedge motor. It really was. It revved like a small block, right? Oh man, they sound good.
They were good. I'm not going to take anything away from the FE so now, if you want to compare it in along the lines of the big block Mopar, the big block Chevy, good, solid performing street engines. Yeah, no, the Cammer, the FE is right there with it. There's they had their issues with the exhaust ports and the way Ford designed their cars, but the shock towers, did a whole video on that, right? So they were a little bit more difficult to work with and deal with and put headers on than any of the other engines. But the FE in and of itself was not a bad engine. But when you push it to the extremes, when you go to the end of the rainbow, you're talking about blowers and nitro and huge loads of nitrous, a huge boost. No, the motor just does not have a place in that world.
And there's very few blocks that do. I mean, when you're talking factory engines that can handle that kind of abuse, right? The Hemi, the only reason they call it the elephant is because the sucker has freaking got a ton of metal in it. The reason why it's got a ton of metal, so it can handle that abuse. That was the intention behind the whole thing. The factory blocks that can handle that kind of abuse, they're few and far between. Big block Chevrolet is one, but it's also 600 and something pounds.
All right. The first generation of street Hemi, right, or 426 Hemi, 64, 65 race motors, and in 66 they put them in a street car. From 64 to 69, they used the same main saddle structure as the regular wedge.
The RB motors?
As a 413, 426 wedge row 440, okay, of those years. And they are prone to cracking. When you step on them, you get any type of detonation, they will crack, right? It's just a normal thing for those. Okay. 1970, beginning of 1970, they increased the metal on the upper saddle, right? And that was a running production change from January 19th, 1970 onward, right? In 1976, they revised the 440 block to have that larger main Hemi saddle. And that was the 76, 77, 78, 440 blocks. So out of all of the 440 blocks, those latest ones, the late 70s ones, are the strongest by far, right? If you're going to, subject them to severe abuse. That increase wasn't enough for blown nitro, for blown nitro use, because at that point, 1971, 1972, they discovered that if you speed the pumps up, right, and run 70 degrees of lead in the mag, the shit will really make power. And at that point, it was spitting crankshafts out of those engines. So 1974, Chrysler released the fuel block, also known as the D5 block, because it has a modified upper row of cylinder heads, upper valley to clear the D5 push rods. But the D5 was a whole different application. Those blocks, those 1974, 1975 blocks, were intended to be used on nitro, and they have enormous main saddles, and they have like extra beef everywhere. Those blocks weigh 40 pounds more than a regular street Hemi block. And they have so much nickel in them, they glow in the dark. Like you can spot them from a mile away. So, seriously, you walk into a machine shop. I've done this, okay?
They don't even rust. That's how much nickel.
So, I'm serious, man. You walk into a machine shop and there's like, you see a sea of blocks. There's like 60 freaking blocks. If there's a fuel block in there, a D5 block, you can spot it from across the fucking room because it goes, ding.
It's like tinkle,
yeah, exactly.
like twinkles.
Twinkles, right?
Well, and see, the big block Chevrolet was the latecomer to the show at that point. See, originally before that you had your W series, your 409s, and they were not even competitive really to anything like the Hemi or even the FE 427, right? But man, when they came out with the traditional Gen 4 big block, isn't that what it is? That was where the rubber met the road. That's where everything changed.
Mark John, was that a D5 in your garage? No, I've only had one D5 in my life. And actually, I ran it blown on nitro in my altered. That was the only. And I come to think of it, we used that block in Gana's funny car at one point because we were short a block and we had a match race to do. And I actually pulled that whole deal out of my car and stuck it in his car. And as far as I know, it was the last iron block to actually be used in a fuel funny car.
Bruce W says, Plan Z, is she all dialed in and ready to make some passes now?
I hope so.
Will you live stream when you drag race Plan Z? Well, okay, the track does not have good internet cell service. It does not. We'll try our best. I don't think it's gonna be good, to tell you the truth. And we're already planning. My wife and I are already planning on just recording and then uploading when we get home. Mm-hmm. You taking a spare rear end? He asks. No. Okay. Dakota's timeout says, "Did you say a D5 was a factory or aftermarket block?"
It's a factory block. People think that they stopped casting 426 Hemis in '71, but Chrysler actually cast them late into 1975 because they were available over the counter. Those D5 blocks took the place of the warranty blocks. So, and you could buy them they cast a bunch of them. And as late as I want to say 1980, you could still go to a Chrysler dealer and order one of those blocks over the counter.
So Tom Muse says Pontiac used a 421, correct, for NASCAR during the 426 and big block Chevy years. That's correct. What Tony's talking about though is when you put the abuse to them to like nitromethane or a whole bunch of nitrous or a turbo and a blower or whatever, the Pontiacs would give up the ghost. You heard Magnante in the NHRA Drag Racing History Channel video where he said they had a Pontiac motor in Brutus originally, and it kept blowing the crank out.
It's not so much the crank as the armor cast rods.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah, the Pontiac had cast rods.
Armor steel. Same as Buick.
Armor steel, right.
For the crank.
Yeah, and those things were just like... I would tell you the story
I need to find out what that's really made of. No, you didn't.
I told this. We were like, this is like 1980. I want to say it was like 1980, 1979, 1980. Okay. And we're on Staten Island. And Thursday nights were the night that everybody take their stuff out, right? So there was this kid that had a red Trans Am. And we kept hearing about, it was with a Pontiac motor in it, an early Pontiac motor in it. And we kept hearing about how he was putting a blower on it. He's putting a blower on it, right? It's like a big deal, right? He's putting a blower on it. And we're all standing in the H&L Oldsmobile parking lot, okay? And we're hanging out, right? Just the usual thing. And off in the distance, this is like 10 o'clock at night, so like traffic is like died down. And off in the distance, we hear, ee, right? It's like, oh shit, that's a blower, right?
Yeah, here comes somebody.
So like we're all, everybody who's like, there's maybe like 50, 60 of us guys hanging around in the parking lot. And we're all like, this is hot. This is that kid with the Trans Am, with the red Trans Am. He put a blower on it, right? So he pulls up to the light, okay? And we're all standing there watching it, like we're in awe because it's like, right? That's bad.
Nobody can afford a blower.
Right? So naturally, he's watching us, and we're like, he's got to do something.
Get on it.
Yeah, so the light turns green. He stomps it, and when he stomps it, it blows the crankshaft right out onto the ground. It just chunks, and it was just blocked.
Like the magic muffler kind of deal?
Yeah, it just blew it out the bottom of the... We were like, oh, these blowers aren't so hot.
Blower sounds awesome. But, what was I reading here? John well, I can't even spell
Chichinaki.
Chichinaki. You're much better at this than I am. All right. Well, and I want to butcher your name. Sorry if I did. But you asked, does the AHRA have a Wally-like trophy? We do. And if you go to our Facebook page, I don't even know if you have Facebook, but you go to our Facebook page, we have a group, and then you have the actual professional page. The group has a picture of the trophy that we use. It's called the Greer. Well, it's Cheryl Greer. And so ours is a bust of Cheryl Greer. And it doesn't look anything like Wally.
Cheryl Greer, right, was a true badass. Okay, this guy, this is in 1973, I believe it was. He had a Mustang funny car. I don't remember what race this was. But it was a national event. It might have been an AHRA national event. Might have been an early IHRA event. I don't remember, right? But at any rate, last qualifying session, he gets in the show. So the last qualifying session on Saturday night, he gets in the show, okay, and has this massive fire, right? Literally burns the back of the car off. He's got second and third degrees. Burned his fucking gloves off. He's got second and third degree burns on his fucking hands, okay? So overnight, his crew puts the whole back of the car back together again. They pop riveted sheet aluminum everywhere and like fabricated the back of a car. They checked this guy out of the hospital. They wrapped his hands up in bandages and shit like that. And they cut gloves up and then duct taped the gloves over the bandages. And he went and he actually won the first round like that. You know, they don't make funny car racers like that.
No, I can't imagine like anybody from today. Maybe John Force might pull something like that off, but I doubt it.
Yeah, right? No, they don't.
Because if you really look at the big picture, Force was young when all of these guys were still hitting it hard, just like he's talking about. And Force nobody even heard of Force until all them guys retired. Okay, that may sound very negative coming from me because he's the ultimate funny car champion. But when you get teams of 8 show up, there used to be 32 cars show up at every freaking event, every single one of them. And that's the thing that's like, of course you're going to have somebody that's going to look great because there's 4 times lesser cars.
James Martin. Hey, Tony, when you blew up the mufflers on Chris D'Agostino, it was actually Tony D'Agostino. H12 Roadrunner. You know Tony D'Agostino from Graveyard Cars. He's always on Graveyard Cars. So me and Tony are old friends. We go back to the 80s. Hey, Tony, when you blew the muffler in Tony D'Agostino's H12 Roadrunner when you did the drag test on it for the magazine, was he cool about it? Tony is not cool about anything. Like he doesn't have cool. He doesn't do cool.
He's just wound up, huh?
Yeah. Thanasi Katsudos. I hope I pronounced that right, my friend. Hello, I have a 2001 Jeep XJ that doesn't like gas with 10% ethanol. It does fine with non-ethanol gas. Any advice? You can't back the timing off on that because that's coil unplug on 2001.
So the timing wouldn't like the what is it doing? What is it doing?
Well, he's saying it doesn't like it, which tells me that it's just running
like crap and it's getting horrible mileage.
Yeah, I can't give you a specific answer on it.
And if you're in Europe, I'll bet you that thing was designed to run on non-ethanol gas. Because I had, and this may sound lame, I lived in Australia for 3 years, right? I got a free car. It was a Peugeot. You pump regular gas in it in Australia, no big deal, and it's regular gas. Sometimes you would show up at a gas station, they'd have ethanol or ethyl, right? Hey, dang, that's what we use in the States. I put ethyl in there. Man, that sucker got like half the mileage it normally gets. I mean, half. It was terrible. I couldn't wait to run that fuel out. But if you're overseas somewhere, it may be tuned originally to run on non-ethanol gas.
Michael O'Connelly, history question. During the oil embargo of 1973, were the muscle car guys selling their rigs or just driving less? I don't seem to remember many around that era, but I was only 6. Oh, I was young too in that era, but I was very in tune with what was going on. Those cars, people couldn't get away from those cars fast enough. They disappeared from traffic like right at about that time, 1973, 1974.
That's how my old man ended up with his Stage 1 Buick. 1977, this guy pulled into his gas station. Mm-hmm. And Stage 1 455 Buick, family, kids. And it's getting freaking 6 miles to the gallon. And like, hey, man, this thing's eating me out of house and home. You got anything else? And my grandpa said, we got this 73 Regal over here or whatever it was, the shit box 4-door, right? The guy's like, yeah, I'll trade you even up for that. Oh, okay. So then my grandpa was like, oh, I can't get any mileage out of a 455. Let me show you. And then drove it around and he got like 6 or 8, and then parked it. Like, man, there's something wrong with that.
Those cars got all dumped into the market. They either got abandoned on the side of the road. People did insurance jobs. That was like
burn them.
They burned them everywhere. But for the most part, they ended up in like trailer parks in really bad neighborhoods, and that's where you find those cars still to this day, right? You go through an old trailer park, and if there's any place you're likely to find a 1960s, 70s muscle car like relatively intact in its natural habitat, which has been sitting forever, that's where you're going to find them. Bad neighborhoods and trailer parks.
Well, there is that. You remember that article? Oh man, I don't remember if it was Bank Shift did it or Hot Rod Magazine did it, or there was a real deal. I want to say like a Chevelle SS396 car, 4-speed or something like that in New York City. No, it was a Roadrunner, and it had been in New York City since the day it was purchased, and it was still driving around. And
that's not a Roadrunner. It's a 1968 Dark GTS.
Is it?
It's a 340 GTS.
But it was like 500,000 miles on it, and it rusted to death, and it had been on the road since the day it was bought.
Yep. Now, as a former New York City resident, I would occasionally see that car out in the wild. You'd spot it. It was I did magazines out in New York for a couple of years, so I was always in traffic. I was always navigating my way across Manhattan, and I would occasionally see that car. It was a local legend.
So Joe K says, I love how Pontiac soldiered on into the late 70s with the Trans Am while all other muscle cars got neutered or axed. That's not true, Joe. Actually, the Chrysler carried the Hemi up to 74, right?
No, 71.
71? Oh, well, all right. But Pontiac, they had their stuff was supposedly low compression. It was the GM had a mandate 71. They all run on unleaded, right? Except for the Trans Am 455 Super Duty, which was an absolute badass.
But Joe is right. I mean,
I thought Chrysler kept it. I thought Mopar kept their shit till 74.
Well, they dropped the 364 barrel, and so the 340 ended in 73. The 360, the high performance. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. They ran that through most. The thing is, the Trans Am was one of the last of the overt muscle cars.
It was, and
you know what I mean.
He's right about that. I mean, I love how they kept going on too, but it was low key, and it wasn't until somebody tested it, like, holy crap, why does this Pontiac run so much better than all the other ones?
New BZ UTG. I remember reading about a few really rare 72 Hemis. I could swear I chased what was supposed to be a 72 Hemi Cuda and people had. This is back around 1990. People swore this car existed, and I'm trying to remember what town it was in. But it was northern New Jersey, not far from the offices in Hackensack where I used to do Cars Illustrated. And I chased the rumors of this car for, I'm saying, I got to say 2 years, because people had seen it and swore that it was the real deal and swore they had seen the VIN tag on it. And it was a legit 1972 Hemi Cuda. It was triple black, automatic, I believe it was. It's a long time ago now. But I chased it and chased it and chased it, and I could never find, evidence that the car actually existed other than hearsay.
Damn it. Mopar Man 78. I did get your email. I printed it out. I had every intention of bringing it here because it was a huge email and it had a lot of pictures in it, right? And I was going to bring it here and discuss it with Tony. I'm so sorry. I forgot it. I was literally jumping through my own ass today. So, but yes, I did get it, and I had every intention of reading it tonight and then get your thoughts on it. He was asking me about his plans with what he's trying to build, and he wanted some feedback on it.
Okay, we'll do that. Stephen McIntyre, I got the heads off my 84 Bronco, and I wanted to know if it's necessary to replace the bolts. I didn't have to use head to remove them. Oh, heat. Okay, and they're not torque to yield. Thanks for your advice. You absolutely should be able to reuse them.
Yeah, 84 you will. Yeah, Ford didn't start until I'm telling you, like 94.
Yeah,
was the cutoff year.
did they? Okay, here's the question: when you took it apart, okay, did they all break evenly, or were one or two and a couple of them loose? Excuse me, looser than they should have been?
No, there's an easy way to tell on the Ford 302 stuff,
Yeah.
or the Ford small blocks. They have a shouldered bolt, and if it's a torque to yield, it's not shouldered bolt.
Well, 84 wouldn't be torque to yield.
Huh?
84 wouldn't be torque
No,
to
it's
yield.
not. It's not torque to yield.
Okay, so here's if you're doing an engine that doesn't have torque to yield bolts, okay, and you want to know if the head bolts are any good, your first indication is when you take the engine apart, when you got your breaker bar on there or whatever you're using to break the head bolts, right? You should hear each of them snap loose. Okay, so you put leverage on it, you get a couple of pulls and it goes snap, and it'll turn. Okay, if you put your breaker bar on there and you don't feel that snap or the thing is already kind of loose, good chance that bolt is stretched. Okay, so right away any of those would be suspect. If you've taken it apart and you weren't paying attention, right, or you committed, like in my opinion, the ultimate sin and use like an impact gun to take it apart. You don't never use an impact gun to take a motor apart. Don't worry about what you do in the pits during right. That has nothing to do with building an engine. Just a regular street engine. Then what you want to do is you want to take a caliper, okay, and run the caliper along the shank of the bolt. Okay, if the bolt is stretched, you will have a thin spot in the bolt, right? So someplace between the threads and the head of the bolt, along that smooth section of the shank, take a caliper and run it back and forth on that shank.
You'll likely be able to see it.
Yeah, if the bolt is stretched, you'll see it because it'll dip down. It'll take like an hourglass kind of shape to it. Mr. Will, thank you, sir. Hey guys, I have to chime in. Late 70s Pontiac have loads of potential if it had the Pontiac 400 and decent gears. I got mine into the 13s with simple tuning.
Yeah, that's probably about normal, right? I mean, like 13s was. You remember the early 90s? 13s was kind of the number if you had a tuned performance car.
350 horsepower, right?
Mm-hmm.
350 horsepower at 3,500 pounds, which is the typical street car, is a 13-second car.
Chromoly rings, what's the deal? Dean Jollo asks, Chromoly rings, what's the deal?
What about them?
I don't know. Smoking Wrench says chromoly rings, fast break-in, better sealing, and less friction.
Well, the thing about chromoly rings is that the bore finish is super important. Chromoly rings are not good for regular street use. Chromoly rings are good for a race engine, right? With a perfectly here's where you get into this now, right? They use cast rings on street engines, or used to. Now they use stainless rings, low tension rings, but traditionally they use a cast ring because on a street engine, the bore is never completely round and the bore is never consistent from hot to cold. So what happens is that cast ring is flexible, it has a lot of surface area, and it'll take care of those imperfections. That the half a thousandth of an inch here or there, the cast ring will seal. Okay, it'll conform to whatever distortions the cylinder wall better than okay. Now a Molly ring is intended to be used on an engine that is absolutely perfect, top to bottom, and has a very, very fine cylinder bore finish. Like, for instance, let's just say you hone an engine the same way you did with cast rings, and then you put Molly rings on it. Before you've even started the engine, the Molly coating has already been wiped off the rings. That's why you'll see a lot of people have problems. Like they'll put a Molly ring thing, they think this thing is going to seal because they put them, they bought top of the line Molly rings. They assemble the motor, but the thing never breaks in and it never makes any power. And that's because unless the bore is exactly perfect and you've got almost a mirror-like finish on the cylinder walls, the Molly will just flake off. The friction just takes it right off the ring. So that's the deal with Molly rings. They're good for race engines. They're good for carefully prepped, type of things, but terrible for a regular street engine. You don't ever want to use those on a regular, like I'm going to drive this thing to work, street engine.
Ford 302s came with them all. came with Molly rings.
Which ones?
Back in the 80s. Like late 80s, early 90s. They all came with Molly's. Some of them had a ring that I'm assuming was ductile iron. You could take it, twist it in half, and the sucker would still be it'd be broken, it'd be unusable, but it wouldn't break. Do you recommend lead additive in an original 239 flathead Ford?
Probably not a bad idea.
I don't know if they did tetraethyl lead back that far long ago, did they? Because remember, World War II is where high octane fuels came from.
Yeah, but the lead is there as just a lubricant for the seat.
Right.
I
don't know if they had tetraethyl lead before that, though. I think it was. Did. Was it?
I believe they did. Well, that's what ethyl. That's where ethyl comes from.
Wait, it's a flathead Ford.
Flathead Ford.
You don't have to use lead. You don't have to use anything in that because it's got the whole block to take the heat out of the seat.
Well, that's true. That's true.
See, flatheads were designed to run on 65 octane. I thought it was really low octane fuels. In the 80s, all I remember was reading about the Buick 450 being called the Hemi Killer. It made me love Buicks. We actually did a video. Me and Tony did a video on that.
Which was that?
The Hemi Killer Buick.
Oh, yeah. Jory T. I've got a question about my 74 Challenger. It fights to stay alive when stopped in gear. It has a 360 with aluminum heads, a bit of a cam, and a 904 with a shift kit, I think. It's probably a carburetor issue, probably a blocked, low-speed, idle passage. I don't know what kind of carburetor you got on there, but your problem is probably in the carburetor itself. The low-speed passages in the carburetor.
Zippo Andolini asked, does lead additive need to be added to a 70 Buick 455? I would go on a limb and say yes, but I've also read where Buicks, Olds, and Pontiacs have so much meat in the head, so much cast iron in the head, it actually pulls the heat out of the seats. And I've really seen none with sunken valves. Now, Tony's told me that some of the Mopars will sink the valves.
Mm-hmm. It's hit and miss.
Chevrolets will sink the valves. I've seen a lot of those sink the valves, but I've never seen a Buick sink the valves. Usually the guides are worn out by then, the guides and the actual valve stem. You guys are on lockdown in Australia?
They got all kinds of crazy stuff happening in Australia. I don't know.
Really? They're on lockdown now?
Yep.
I wonder why they're on lockdown
now.
They've been.
Oh, they got this thing in Australia where they tell you can't talk to anybody.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy.
I thought Australia was just like the United States and Canada. I wonder what's going on there.
Danny Boyd says, pets steal your freedom, but they're usually worth it. I don't know where that came from, but I agree with that. I agree with that. My pets absolutely steal my freedom, but I wouldn't trade them for the world.
Yep, Tony's going to be at the Slant 6 Nationals. He was on the poster.
Woo-wee.
And Trudy the Burnout Chicken's going to be there too, but she's a rotisserie.
In spirit, yeah. In spirit.
Type of engine for roll racing. Import.
Mr. Will, $5. Thank you, sir. UT in Dallas, do you see gasoline becoming an issue in the near future to take older cars off the road? No.
I tell you what I do see. I see all of these nut jobs buying up their electric cars, making the gas price plummet, and then we'll all be happy driving around with fucking $1 a gallon gas. That's what I'm thinking. Because they'll be sucking up all the electricity, and next thing you know, electricity will go through the roof. Lots of tyranny in Australia.
Yeah, there's crazy stuff happening over there.
The marching the army through the streets? Oh, holy crap. Zippo Andolini. No, I don't have a 4-speed Buick yet, but I am building one. Let's see. Muscle City Madness. I'm hearing the flat tappet issue everyone is having as of late isn't the lifters, it's the oil. The oil companies have gone to cheap ingredients And that's what's causing the issue. What do you think?
That is way old news, brother man. That's if we were having this conversation 15 years ago, yes, that's when they started taking the zinc out of oil. But since then, we've collectively we've come to find which oils have zinc in them and add zinc additives. So like just about everybody makes a zinc-rich additive. You know, Lucas and STP and Bartle and everybody who's in the oil business makes a high performance additive that has zinc in it. So no, that definitely was an issue back then, but it's not an issue anymore.
Did we miss one of these?
No.
No. Okay.
Ruckwarts, can you use a standard flywheel for a 455? They were nearly impossible to find back in the day.
What was that?
Can you get a standard flywheel for a 455? They were nearly impossible to get back in the day.
Oh yeah, TA Performance actually has them, and if you need one for a dyno, they'll rent you one just to use it.
Old Jetfire, what's happening, man? You're nearly over this virus. I will get you a picture. No, you have the Rona, man. I had it. It was a bitch.
Oh, he was telling me. He said we were emailing back and forth, and he was going to send me some pictures of some 4-speed parts he had. So for my '63 Buick, and then he's like, dude, I got to stop. I got the Rona. I'm like, oh man, I'm so sorry. I felt bad for him because it's literally like we just sent a couple emails back and forth.
Let's see.
What's the best way to get horsepower from a Chevy 348 with 3.2 barrels? Swap in a 409 crank. I think that's the same crank, isn't it?
I don't know about that. I don't know about that. But he's asking about what's the best way to get it from specifically from the 348.
348.
So I imagine he doesn't want to reconfigure his entire thing. He just wants.
Yeah. So see, they had the combustion chamber was part of the cylinder, right? Not the head.
Right.
I bet the best way to do something for a 348 is deck that sucker probably like 20 thousandths.
I'm going to assume that it's a together engine in a car.
And he doesn't want to deck it,
and he's just looking to get it to snap to a little bit. And I'm gonna say that it's probably distributor work. Getting the curve in as quickly as possible and finding what the optimum timing for the thing would be. I would say your biggest performance gains for that kind of engine are going to be found in a distributor.
So Texas Mopars being a smartass says put the pistons backwards.
Put the pistons backwards. That's the other thing too.
In a 348, you can't do that. I don't think you can do that at all. Aren't those chamber specific?
The 348 would be, yeah.
W motor is all in the rods. Really?
How is it all in the rods?
Maybe it's one of those long, tall pistons. It's got like a 3-inch compression height.
Evan, what is the best vehicle to put on the moon? A Pontiac Aztek.
No, didn't they already put one on the moon?
An Aztek?
Oh no, I'm just saying. Didn't they already put something on the moon? Or no, that was what's his name, weirdo guy, put it on in space.
They had the lunar rover. They had back in '72, I think it was. They had a little electric cart.
Oh yeah, that's
up bouncing around. Yeah,
I was thinking. What's his name? I can't remember that guy's name. That weird guy, Elon Musk. He put something in space. He put a Tesla in space or something, didn't he? He put something in space. Australia was doomed when Holden was closed. Oh, I was so happy that. Well, I wasn't happy that they closed. I was so happy I was leaving there right when the hell that happened. When they closed, they stopped making the Falcon. You should have seen the Falcons they had up to like 2012 or something. God, they were freaking badass looking. Then you had Holden had their own car too. That was the same as your. I guess came here to the States was a Chevrolet SS, right, or Pontiac G8.
Crazy Wrench Garage. Do you think big exhaust is better? Say like 2.5 inch or 3 inches better than the other? Depends on the application. Depends on the application. Too big of an exhaust throws heat away too. Heat is the lubricant of exhaust. We just talked about this, I think, last week, right? Too big of an exhaust gets cold. The further down the pipe you get, the colder it gets. And what will happen is if the pipe is too big, doesn't have enough push behind it, from many cubic inches, it'll actually stall and become a restriction. So it's not that a bigger exhaust is a better exhaust. A proper sized exhaust is the best exhaust. So an exhaust for a 450 cubic inch engine or a 500 cubic inch engine is going to be different than an exhaust for a 300 inch engine. They're going to have different needs because of the amount of atmosphere that gets pumped through them. So you want to have a properly sized exhaust, not one that's too big or too small.
So someone was asking to put a 455 Buick in an Opel. But here's something interesting. I did find an Opel GT, a 68 Opel GT.
There's one here on Facebook Marketplace.
$700.
I saw it.
Maroon one?
Yep.
Man, I was literally about ready to load up the trailer and take the 215 with me and swap in the driveway. Oh, man, I need to go get that thing. I just need life to slow down for.
I'll tell you what, on a street engine, like, okay, when I say street engine, I mean a daily driver engine, better to err on the side of small than big, right? You'll get more efficient part throttle where you're going to use it the most. You'll get more efficient part throttle out of a smaller exhaust than you will out of a larger exhaust. So you'd want to err on the side of small if it's primarily a street driver.
Well, I need life to slow down, Danny Boyd. I'd love to go get that thing, but I got a freaking pile of projects in my driveway, and I got no time to go get it. I want to get the dang thing. I know Doug Norton, that thing would be badass. A T5, a 215 Buick, all aluminum in an Opel GT, that would be killer.
That would be sweet.
Does anyone make an adapter? That's what David J is asking. Does anyone make an adapter to fit a Slant 6 with an A518 overdrive tranny?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. You could follow. All right. Okay. Yeah. See? Okay. Dodge trucks. 1960s, and I can't tell you what year, right? But Dodge trucks, Slant 6 trucks, came with 727s. Okay? So there is no Slant 6 727. They had an adapter to go from the slant to the V8 bolt pattern, to the small block bolt pattern. So you might want to look for that. That may work. I'm not sure. Somebody might not, because I've never tried it. But that may be an answer. Research about the adapters that Chrysler used, the factory adapters that Chrysler used to go from the 727 to the Slant 6 in the truck applications. That might work.
So, how was it? John Choganacki? Is there a company making Slant 6 scatter shield?
Not that I know of. Not that I know of.
$455 at a Miata. No, I'll pass. That would be a death trap. Yeah, I know. 65 Riviera is a beautiful car, Mr. Classic Enthusiast.
Matt S., I've got a Slant 6 727 from an 81 D150. Okay, Matt, is it a Slant 6 bell housing on the transmission, or did they use an adapter?
Zippo, yes, they did use M22 rock crushers and on a big block Buick.
Rude Mopar also has a Slant 6 727. Is it a Slant 6 specific bell housing on that 727, or is it an adapter? Heath Metal says you don't need a scatter shield, you need a mulch bag, right? It's great. It's the craziest lawnmower I've ever had. Okay, Rude Mower dude says it's a bell housing. Okay, so scratch that idea. It's that adapter is not. All right. Thank you guys for that answer. Mike Smith, Tony, are you against Panther Pink on 71 Mopars? Yes, because it was a 1970 only color.
So Dakota's Timeout says, have y'all ever used older Speed Pro pistons? Mine are probably about 5 years old. I don't think they are made anymore. They say these are heavy. Have y'all found piston to weight to affect performance? No. That's the pistons that everybody used. So those Speed Pros are essentially what used to be the TRW forge.
Right? Yeah, and those are weighted to be direct replacements for the stock piston.
And that's what everyone used before all this newfangled piston stuff came out. So there's no way it's going to hurt you at all. I actually took a set of 302 pistons that were and ran them in my nitrous Thunderbird. I got them cheap because they were the old 564s. Isn't that what it is? 564s rings? Yeah. So there was the old 564s rings instead of the newer metric version, which is like the 1.5 millimeter or whatever. I bought them cheap from PAW like in 2003. They were brand new and everybody laughed at me for doing it. And then I even put sealed power, or not sealed power. I put gapless rings. I put gapless rings on suckers.
ZGS.
Yeah.
Zero gap second.
Yeah, and they were zero gap rings. And I sprayed that sucker with as much nitrous as I wanted to. And guess what it did? It split the block. That piston did not give up.
The piston weight only becomes a problem when you're dealing with a long stroke, short ride application that has really fast piston speed,
and a lot of
super high RPM. Right,
rod angle, big time.
Yeah, if you got a 4-inch stroke with a 5-inch rod, you're going to spin to 8,000 RPM. Yeah, those pistons are going to just boom, right? But typical, like you're going to be just fine. Those pistons are heavy because they're designed to be heavy because they're supposed to be a direct replacement for the factory piston. So you should be able to just swap it right over and not worry about balancing.
Zippo Andolini, what's a 7350 300 horsepower 4-bolt main out of a Camaro worth? It's whatever somebody's willing to pay for.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd started just about any core engine's worth about $500.
Redline 150 Productions, what is your plans for the Junkyard 5.9 Magnum? I have zero plans for it. That engine belongs to the Junkyard Jet guys. And if you're not familiar with it, these are 3 novices. They've never built a race car before. They've never built an engine before, anything like that. And they're going to do their own due diligence, and they can ask me whatever, my opinions on stuff, but they're coming up with the combination themselves, and I am just going to oversee them to help them get the most out of their idea. So I have no plans for it, and I'm not sure what their plans are for it. But if you want to find out what their plans are for it so far, they will be here live tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. We're going to do a live with them for an hour or two, and they're going to talk about the project. Now, just because I don't seem to do enough lives, Friday night I've got, and I'm really looking forward to this, I've got Matt Happel from Sloppy Mechanics. He's going to be with us Friday night at 7 o'clock. We're going to spend a couple hours with him. He is absolutely awesome. So tomorrow night, 7 o'clock, the Junkyard Jet crew is going to be with us. And then Friday night at 7 o'clock, Matt Happel from Sloppy Mechanics.
Sounds good.
Yes.
Yeah. When are you actually leaving for the Slanted National? Sunday?
Sunday morning.
Sunday morning. Okay.
And then I'll be back here for Sunday night. Oh, no. Uncle Kathy says Matt can't do it on Friday. Okay, so take back everything I said. I mean, no, not that he's. I mean, don't take back the fact that he's a great guy, right? And he's got a great channel, but take back that he's going to be with us on Friday.
Yeah, you got to rewind the whole thing. And suck it all back in.
Yeah. James Martin, any plans on doing something with Manyanti again? Absolutely, on both of our channels, the AHR Drag Racing History channel, my channel, and also on Steve's channel.
If you haven't seen that video, James, you need to go over and watch that video right now. Is the evolution of funny car, and it's actually 2 parts. So it's part 1 and 2, and it was literally over an hour long, and I had to chop it down and then split it into 2 to have it be a reasonable show. But it was me and Tony and Steve talking about the evolution of funny cars. It was a really good show.
Chad Martin, what do you guys think of the RPM Performer intake from my 340, which is on a 73 Power Wagon? Good manifold, good choice. Okay, Captain, he emailed and has to go to the track Friday. He wants to know if you could do it Saturday. Possibly, yeah. I mean, I don't see any reason why we can't.
He putting pistons back into a 348. That's because of that notch in there.
Yeah. See, that's something I've never done. I've never actually assembled one of those engines. I've worked on them, but I've never built one. I don't know how you would go about doing that.
I don't know either. I'm assuming that you make sure the gap is not in that. And
yeah, I have no idea. How do you put the pistons in a W motor?
Zip, my dad passed away. I got a 70 stage 1.
Mr. Will, thank you. UT, back in 06, my engine builder for my Charger suggested a stroker crank for the numbers matching 383. I said no and kept my steel crank. Good choice. I don't know.
Have you ever heard anybody building a stroker out of a 383?
Yeah, if you put a 440 crank on a 383, you end up with a 426.
Really?
Yeah.
Are they a good running motor?
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually a very good running motor.
I've never heard of them. I know 383s. Everybody loves that motor. It's like the most versatile engine that Chrysler ever made, right? Because it's not quite a small block, but it gets quite a small block gas mileage. But yet
it's a big block.
Runs like a big
small block.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like my 400 Buick and my Suburban, huh? So.
Let's see. Oh boy, Kathy's got a big fan base.
I know, she should have her own channel.
She should have her own channel.
Ultra Kathy.
Everybody loves Ultra Kathy.
I don't know, what would she call it?
Ultra Kathy. Yeah.
Welcome to Ultra Kathy.
Welcome to Ultra Kathy's universe.
Oh, Mopar Man 1970. Tony and Dallas, is there any truth to drilling out a hole on each side of the piston on the lowest part of the skirt? The article years ago said it helps stabilize the piston from slap. I think it would actually work the other way. If you're drilling the skirt, you have less skirt. I would never drill the skirt.
I couldn't imagine why that would work. I have trimmed skirts in the name of saving weight. Let me tell you something. In my life, I'm old. Okay, in my life, I have pondered many things. Right. I mean, like having to do with the universe and creation and all subject of matter and society and so on and so forth. All religions, all practices. At one time or another, I've studied all of it, and never once did I concern myself with piston slap. It just never entered my picture. It's just not part of my. It's not in my realm. So I couldn't say.
I was just thinking that it would, if you drilled the skirt, it would probably create a point at which it would crack the skirt easily and break the skirt.
No, because a circle. If you drill in a hole, it's a circle, so there's no sharp edges. It's
Right.
all radius. So I couldn't see a crack originating from there. And like I said, I have cut away skirt in the name of lightning pistons. And it's like I've never had a problem, but like I said, piston slap is just one of those things I've never concerned myself with. I don't care if they slap away, knock yourself out. Doesn't bother me.
Okay. John Wilburn says that you're 59.298.
Yeah.
That's a decimal version of your age?
Yeah. The Pirate Apache, Tony, with a conversion to a carb on a later 318. Do I need a new distributor? Yes. Is there a way to rewire it to work without the feedback from the throttle body? Just get any. I just had this conversation with Doug from D&E Garage. D&E in the Garage. Great channel. Small channel, but great guys.
Oh, I just got a freaking brainstorm of an idea.
Wait. Let me just finish this.
Okay.
So for a TBI conversion, just get a standard Chrysler electronic ignition and wire it in standard Chrysler electronic ignition way, or put points in it and just run one negative wire to the coil. But yeah, no, you can't use the TBI distributor with that. Okay, what were you saying?
I was actually thinking, you know how the let's call them like the street dead guys, okay? They tested the flipping the piston theory thing, right? Isn't that what you said?
Yeah.
So your next commercial that you know how you had your awesome oil funnel commercial?
Yeah, that was pretty good funnel.
All right, you need to take a set of pistons and drill holes in them and install them for lightweight pistons, right? And then like this is better than all of them, right? And just have literally like have holes in the freaking things, like big huge holes in the top of the piston.
Let's see.
Exactly, Smoking Range. You get it. Drilling holes in the piston only works if it's flipped.
Mr. Classic on USA, wonder whatever happened to DeSoto. I vaguely remember seeing a DeSoto fire dome on it. Reminds me, I need to read from A. Buick. The DeSoto, they ended DeSoto in 1861.
Those fire domes, weren't those like 2-barrel carbureted, like 271 cubes or something weird like that?
Well, no, they had a 4-barrel version and they had a two 4-barrel version.
Oh, did they really?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
John Wilburn says Drag Boss has race used pro stock pistons from the 1970s that had drilled skirts. Okay.
I did not know that. Drill a hole in the head. That's almost
like this. I have trimmed skirts away, on different engines, playing around with different things over the years, and I've never had a problem.
DeSoto was popular with drag boats. I wonder why that would be.
It's still used in land speed racing. It's still
really
relatively popular.
That's because it's small cubic inch, though, right?
Yep. Arthur Fiddler, Tony, why no love for the big block Mopar heads? They are said to flow better than the best small block Mopar heads or any other small block heads. In what planet, in what dimension does a big block Mopar head outflow a good small block Mopar head? I must have missed that.
Roger Isbell's asking AHRA sanctioned nationwide gasser race. I'll tell you what, I tried to do a gasser race like 3 years ago, maybe. Everybody had their own interpretation of what's a gasser, and I was an asshole for even putting something together that was going to try to compare these two together. And it's like, oh my God, I don't want no part of it. No part of it. Keep your gassers.
Doug Narden says Dodge Hemis were small displacement, Chrysler Hemis were large displacement, DeSoto's Hemi were both in the 50s. The Chrysler, right, is the 331, 354, 392, right, and the 392 is a taller deck. Biggest of the early Hemis. The DeSotos are 2 inches smaller in every dimension. So the DeSoto is 2 inches narrower, 2 inches shorter, 2 inches lower than a Chrysler, 354, 392.
Right? Oh, I see what he's talking about. Okay.
The Dodge is the Red Ram Hemi is 2 inches smaller than a DeSoto in every dimension. So that's essentially it. It's just like boom, 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 right? 3 different sizes of Hemis.
So he was saying that the article itself was saying that the holes in the skirt allowed it to stabilize the piston on downward travel. So it's working like a parachute, like a relief hole in a parachute.
That's one of those things. I'm gonna have to say I've never. Okay, there's lots of things that get experimented with, and the piston flipping could fall under that category also. It could work, but if there was any advantage to drilled holes in the skirts or Swiss cheese skirts, it would be a normal thing. It would just be something that everybody did, piston manufacturers. Now, one of the arguments is, well, piston manufacturers put the pin in dead center, right? Unless you order them with an offset. You can order pistons with an offset. but I've never seen anybody offer a drilled skirt as an option. So I'm going to say the drilled skirt thing is one of those, like, it may work in a situation here or there, but it's not something that's across the board.
Maybe we should just talk about that the whole night. Drilled skirt pistons, and then it'll end up on
And
a
EGRs.
freaking episode.
How does a drilled skirt piston affect the EGR though?
Well, I think it's just going to end up on an episode of Engine Masters, right? Because they're running out of material.
Oh yeah, they're obviously running out of material.
Okay, Sean the person asks, what did knurling piston skirts do? I've heard of and I've done.
You have done it? Because I've never done it.
I have done it. So normally if you hold up a piston and you see the little ridges on the side, those are there to capture oil and then drag them up the cylinder wall with the lubricate the cylinder wall as the piston's traveling up and down. When you used to get a high mileage engine, you take the pistons out. Normally the skirts were scuffed, right? From abuse or heat or lack of oil changes or whatever, you name it, right? It was wear. What you would do is you take those pistons and you would take them back to the machine shop and they would knurl the skirt and reintroduce. It would actually make the piston a little bit larger, and then it would reintroduce an area where you could capture oil and take it back up the cylinder wall. That was the whole purpose of it.
Okay, there's another purpose to it also, and that's it. But now we're talking about engines from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, right? Those engines are all designed to go, or the pistons are designed for a 10 overbore and reusing the stock pistons.
Oh, really? 10 overbore?
Yeah.
Oh, I've never seen that.
Yeah, they're all that would be the standard cleanup overbore. So let's just say you brought your engine to the dealership, right?
Uh-huh.
And it's just the cylinder rolls are all scratched and gouged and everything else, right? You can do an economy job by just going a 10 over cleanup bore,
knurl the pistons,
reusing the stock pistons, and they would knurl the pistons, and that would take up the extra space. Because when you go 10 over, you're adding 10 over, you're adding 3 thousandths to piston and wall clearance. So if you have 5 thousandths, you start with 5 thousandths, hit it with 8 thousandths, which isn't a lot,
right? No,
but they would knurl, and that would take up the difference and keep the piston from rocking.
Well, the funny thing was that I had used a motor that was sat outside for 25 years, and I knocked it apart, right? And I got all the pistons and rods out without tearing them up, but it was seriously rusted in the cylinder walls. And I just honed the sucker forever until it finally got down to good metal, right? And then the machinist was like, I would recommend knurling those pistons. And I'm like, oh, okay. What's the whole purpose of it? He's like, oh, to put the grooves back. But maybe it was covering my ass that I honed that sucker 10 over.
Mr. Classic Car USA, pistons used to be perfect cylinders. Then they become slightly oval, opposing oval T top and bottom. Wrong, Mr. Classic Car USA. All pistons are elliptical. So the head of the piston, the very top of the piston is always round, okay? But now as you travel further down the piston, the skirt area is wider than the pin area. Pistons are always elliptical. They're never completely round. The skirts are wider than the pin cross-section.
Fast 440 says, go to look up 3D printed pistons, and their skirts are honeycombs, basically.
It's possible. Zero says that I should be the shroud. I'm Zero. I am the shroud. I feel the shroud. I'm within the shroud. I'm through the shroud. I am about the shroud.
Hollywood, we've already murdered that question to death. I'm sorry. I'm not even going to spend any time on it.
Oh, Ali, what is the benefit of putting pistons in backwards? It gives guys from the West Coast something to make a deal about. It gives them an excuse to make videos and stuff like that. Sean the person, when we see a proper Jeep off-roading video, when I can actually get out and do some proper Jeep off-roading.
It'll probably be after the Slanted Nationals. Don't you have nothing coming up the rest of the year then, do you?
No, Bottle Rocket. We go right back to Bottle Rocket. After the Slanted Nationals, which is this weekend, then Plan Z goes back into fucking deep storage, and I get started on Bottle Rocket again. We're going to convert it over to the adjustable rockers. We're going to experiment with burying longer push rods, solid rockers, or adjustable rockers and burying the hydraulic lifters and see if that works. If that doesn't work, then we're going to just switch over to a solid roller setup.
So you're just going to bottom out the lifter then?
Yeah. So that's the story with that. It's Bottle Rocket for this coming weekend. Not Bottle Rocket, Plan Z this coming weekend. And then Plan Z goes back away, and we go back to Bottle Rocket, and we got to try to get that out a couple of times before the end of the year.
Well, the Miata's been collecting dust because there's been about 3 guys that have said, "Hey, I'm going to come give that thing the paces," and then not show up.
Well, here's the thing. I do have somebody, well, actually Garrett from the Junkyard Jet Crew wanted to take the Miata to an autocross to having in Clarksville, Tennessee here this coming Sunday, but we're going to be in Missouri. So, and he's not familiar enough with the car that I could say, here, just go take it and run it. It has some quirks. It's a little funny getting started because it has no choke. He's never had any experience with the car at all. So we're not going to do anything with that this weekend, but before the end of the year. Let's see. Mr. UT, I know you have tons of work, but we'd love to see the 66 Charger they have grown. You're going to see more of that. You're going to see more of that. Doug Norton, bring your Jeep up to Michigan next spring and we'll do some proper off-roading. Bro, it's a job for me to get to the gas station you have no idea. The odds of me making it to Michigan to do anything is like slim to none. Until I can build an actual crew around here, you know what I mean, like a home team type of thing, I'm not going anywhere. There's no time for me to go anywhere. It's just like this event we're having over here this coming Sunday, right? I mean, I'm going to leave Sunday morning. I got to get there, make a couple of runs, then get the car back on the trailer and get the hell back here because I got a live to do on Sunday night, and then I got videos to do on Monday. I got to keep cranking the stuff out. Aaron Hinckley, can you stack up washers or something inside your hydraulic lifters to make them solid? Yeah. I'm going to try bottoming them first. Andy from Unity Motorsports Garage says that's the way to go. So I'm going to take his word on it, and I'm going to try it that way first. Once you've bottomed out the plunger, the center of it, it can only expose the oil hole if the plunger leaves the bottom. So if you've squeezed all the oil out and you've buried the plunger, then it can never take oil in, right? So it should stay solid. I'm going to find out.
Are the Slanted Nationals going to be televised? No, we're probably going to have a few videos from there, and most likely they're going to be recorded and then uploaded. But I don't think that we're going to do any live videos. I don't think that we have the bandwidth. For some reason, cell service there sucks.
Zero Evan C. I'm deleting his douchebag comments. It's a thing. I got to go back and see what they're talking about here. French onion.
Buried Oldsmobile? He just said buried Oldsmobile.
Oh, okay. Ruckwarts, the General Lee that Schneider owns had a tree fall on it. I saw the pictures of that. That's not an actual General Lee. That's one of them Crown Vic conversions where they strip the body panels off of a Crown Vic and they stick Charger body panels on it. And yeah, so the one that got crushed wasn't actually a Charger.
Mopar, man, I'll try to answer it next week. I'm sorry, I totally forgot about it this week.
Jay, do you have any plans on home-built headers for any of the projects? Yeah, I may build a set of headers for the Slag Hammer because I want something that's, that's got that kind of look to it. You know what I mean? Like
I have to build a set for my super stock. Yeah, but here's what's real neat. is I'm going to build it out of a used set of headers. And like,
right.
I'm not even going to bend anything, nothing. I'm just going to make it out of another set of headers.
You can buy a kit. You can buy a universal.
I have to buy the flange, and the flange is expensive enough. It's $145 for the flange.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That seems like a lot.
It is a lot.
And you can't get cheaper flanges than that?
The only one I can find is $145, and there's another guy selling the same things for $145. So that's what they're charging for them. I don't know why. To me, it's pretty damn pricey, right? Because it does not take much to laser cut some mild steel.
Bruce W. is asking a good question. I don't know. Is the slant snatch quarter or eighth mile?
It's eighth mile.
It's eighth mile? Okay.
Yeah.
Tom Hughes is saying just cut some flanges out of 3/8 flat steel. Well, I mean, you have to have somebody who's got like a water jet or something that can do that. Or for flame cutting. I mean, you can't just like take a hacksaw and make yourself some flanges.
The only thing I'm missing, I got a set of 330 Oldsmobile headers that fit a 64 F85. I'm going to see if I can make them fit this 63 Buick Special.
Rockwoods, why is the eighth mile so common today? It's becoming the standard. I'm going to say that the quarter mile is very numbered. I'd say the days of quarter mile racing are probably within 5 years, maybe 10 years at the outside. You won't see any more quarter mile racing. Eighth mile has become the standard. And for a lot of reasons, it keeps the speeds down, which
that's a big benefit.
It's a big benefit, right?
Keeps your insurance down because the speeds are down.
Right. You don't need as much track. You don't need as much land to run.
The land is the big one. Right. The other thing is it's less abusive on your car, right? You get twice as many runs for the same amount of fuel. There's a lot of benefits to it. Now, the downside, the quarter mile, in my personal opinion, is the standard distance, right? That's what it was set up as, the standard.
Was the standard, but it's, again, see, evolution, man. Evolution takes over. Back when the quarter mile was the standard, a car that ran, a typical car, that ran 110, 120 miles an hour, and the quarter mile was a big deal. Now that same 120 mile an hour car is a 170 mile an hour car. Technology moved forward, and it brought everything that much faster. And so you don't really, I mean, it's not good. It's not good. There's too many cars going too fast. You shorten the track and you keep everybody kind of, but yeah, for insurance reasons, for space reasons, from a spectator standpoint, and remember the bleachers at a drag strip are all at the starting line.
So right? What does it matter?
Exactly. The spectator actually has a better idea, a better view of what's going on. If it is one of these things like this, it's a tight race and everything, they can actually see the tight race as opposed to what's happening way off in the distance. So while I started out a very hardcore quarter mile person, I've changed my opinion completely. I'm very in favor of eighth mile. And if you look at every series that's out there, you look at Ducks races and all of the outlaw stuff, no Prep Kings, and every race series today, every modern race series is based around eighth mile. So the quarter mile is a thing that's on its way out. Salty Tech, who knows putting insurance on a race car? Racetracks. You think a racetrack has to have insurance?
Yeah, you can't just show up there and make yourself a greasy spot. We got to have insurance. So for eighth mile, would the Power Glide be the way to go with low rear end gears? Well, that seems to be what some people do because you only got to shift one time.
In a normally aspirated, like a normal race, right? Have you ever seen anybody drive around, right? And I'm not talking about bracket racing, okay? We're obviously, people playing with their dial-ins and all. But have you ever seen anybody drive around somebody after the eighth? It doesn't happen. The race is done. Whoever is in front.
At the 8th mile mark.
99.999%.
Unless you're driving a turbo something.
Right. Whoever's got the edge at the 8th mile is the one who's going through the chops first at the quarter mile.
Jason Towery asks, do Hemi heads fit on a Poly?
Yes. Well, okay. That's not all of them. Chrysler Polys take Chrysler Hemi heads. Dodge Polys take Dodge Hemi heads. Plymouth Polys don't take any Hemi heads, and there is no DeSoto Poly for the DeSoto Hemi head to fit on. The Plymouth Poly is the unborn DeSoto single rocket shaft engine, right? But yeah, so
single rocket shaft. Huh?
Oh, well, that's what it is. So yeah, that's what that is. Danny Boyd, it's been known for someone to drive around the other guy at the big end, especially if there's parts failure or if something gets loose. You're talking about super high horsepower cars that get loose at the 8th mile an hour, right? I mean, nothing with less than 3,000 horsepower is going to get loose out there. So that's not going to happen, right? Stuff breaks, yeah, but stuff breaks at any point of the drag strip. I'm talking about a flat out race where both cars are functioning the way they're supposed to function. Whoever is leading at the 8th, they're leading at the quarter. Zero saying street racing, hell yeah, I have. LA is a rough place to street race. RIP, rest in peace, Dano Live. Yeah, I mean, even at that on the street, man, I can't say with all the street racing I did, I cannot remember too many races changing at the big end, unless you're talking about somebody sandbagging, which is another thing entirely.
What about Top Fuel? What about Top Fuel?
What about it? They run to the
1,000-foot mark.
Campesano Plastic. Terry Ichu is probably my parole officer. Tony, will you be my baby's godfather? My parole officer is pregnant and she says I'm the father. I mean, sure, I would do that. Yeah, no problem.
Jason Towery, when were roller cams starting to be used? I would have to say late 50s, early 60s. When did they start using? Junior fuelers were using rollers.
The first rollers that I'm aware of were in use around 1960, and they had here's some interesting stuff. Okay, all right. So the first roller lifters that were used, they were for they made it for small block Chevys, they made it for Chryslers, with the common ones.
392 Hemi, 354 Hemi.
Right. Okay. So check this one out. All right. So modern roller lifters, okay, aftermarket lifters have a guide bar. All right, that will bridge two lifters to keep them from rotating in the bores. Okay, and production engines, like factory production engines now, they use a retainer. They use what they call a spider to hold down
the link bar.
The link bar, right? Okay.
Dog bones.
On the earliest roller lifters, what they did was they used a little notch, like a key. Like a key, okay, in the lifter, and they broached a line into the lifter bore, and that, which is like such a brilliant idea. I'm surprised that it's not done anymore. It hasn't been done really probably since the 60s, but it's the absolute lightest, absolute simplest, and absolute most foolproof way there is to incorporate a roller lifter into an engine.
So I came up with an idea. See, Buick roller lifters are freaking expensive, right? But it uses the same roller. If I was going to make a Buick V8 roller, the easiest way to do it is have a cam ground, and then don't spend millions of dollars on the lifters. You go get 3.4 liter Chevrolet lifters, which is the same diameter bore with the oil hole in the right spot. And then what you do is you take the dog bones out of the 3.4 liter and you drill the underside of the head with a little dimple. And then you put an adjustable push rod in there and shove that dog bone down up against the head and then lock it into place like a poly lock, right? And then it just hold the dog bone into place. I thought that was pretty genius. I've always wanted to try that. I don't know how to work.
Wild Rose Garage, what's the time cutoff for a roll cage in the 8th mile?
Well, the magic starts happening, and anything faster than 640.
Yeah, 649, 650. is the roll cage. It's $750 for a roll bar.
I'd have to look at my rule book. I don't know them off the top of my head.
It's $750 for roll bar and it's $650 for a cage, I think.
It was $650 is the magic number because that's equal, or I'm sorry, $640 is the magic number because it's equal to a $9.99, right, in the quarter mile.
Tom Hughes, Tony, that is done on all the top roller lifter cars now. The Jessel and Moran motor are all using keyed lifter and bores. I didn't know that. See, and that's why I have you, Tom, because, you know, I'm stuck in my little corner of the world and I can only see what I see, right? Yeah, I had no idea that was still done today.
Did you ever see the lifters with a hole in the bottom? I have
Yes.
I have a set of those. Matter of fact, my super stock Buick, when I get that small block fired up, that's what it has is what they call what is it? Face oil or a lifter face oiling.
Evan says, remember when Tony had less viewers and the live streams were more sketchy topics were discussed. That's our Sunday night show. Our Wednesday night show is we try to keep this tech. You know, we want to talk about tech. We don't talk about anything beyond that, right? And then the Sunday night show is kind of like a free-for-all.
You know, I had somebody buy a membership and they expected me to write them a country song.
Yeah, well, didn't I say?
Oh yeah. And they I just thought it was funny that somebody actually sent me an email saying that. Yeah, I wrote him a song. No, I didn't. I didn't write him a song. I don't have any songwriting skills. I'm not going to lie.
Well, what does having skills have to do with fulfilling a promise?
I have no idea.
Oh, jeez.
Ever build a 3800 Buick? No, I have not. I'd really like to.
Samsonian, the NASCAR engine shops use keyed lifter bores. Okay, I did not know that either.
That's how they used to do the first generation ones, though, right? Was keyed lifters.
Well, those are the ones that I've come across on those the early Hemis. I didn't know. All I've ever seen in today's world is just the ones with the link bar or the dog bones.
All right, Dakota's giving me crap now because I didn't send a song to somebody. I didn't write him a country song. He was like, I live in Texas and I want it to rain. And I'm like, oh man, look, I'm not gonna lie to you. I can't write a song. I should have just wrote some BS and thrown it at him.
Well, yeah, it doesn't. Listen, I never said, Dallas. I never told them that you could write them a good song. At no point did I indicate there was any sort of quality to the song that you were going to write for them.
Yeah,
just that you were going to write a song,
right? And and the things were you had to get all your stuff back, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that what it was? You got your stuff back in the end, and you might end up with somebody else's dog. Then you might not even had a dog before, and you got one now.
Well, if you join the AHRA rather, don't join the NHRA. Don't join the NHRA. If you join the AHRA, right, the All Hot Rod Allowed Association.
Yeah.
Right? All Hot Rods Allowed. That's what AHRA stands for.
Right.
If you join the AHRA today, right, Dallas will come and artificially inseminate your livestock.
Not artificially. We're doing it the old school way.
No, you can't do that.
Oh well,
no.
I'm just gonna get a bull to do it, or the male version to do it. Not me.
Are you sure?
No, I was just gonna have the real ones do it.
All right. Well, there you go. Join the AHRA.
Kind of
join your AHRA now, okay? And Dallas, in addition to sending you all of the merch and his own personal clothes that he's wearing right now, he will also inseminate your livestock
with real animals.
Yeah, with real animals.
I haven't even got my stage one here yet. It's still a million pieces.
Oh, thank God. Zero finally timed out Dakota. You know, he was participating too much. He was like in it too much.
Gideon Wallace says Brian Cabral is looking for work.
Well, you could work at the AHRA Stud Farm.
AHRA Stud Farm. That's exactly what we're going to do from now on. We're just going to have a professional stud farm.
Court says I look like a NASCAR driver with your merch on. Olive, I didn't even see you in there. How you doing, sweetheart?
Records bought all my merch. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And you got to look better than a NASCAR driver because they don't have anything classy like that.
D. Nora, I got an original 83 Monte Carlo SS from Brutz Chevy of Utah with dealer option T-tops. Those are nice cars. I always liked them. I had an 86 Monte SS.
I had an 87. You know what was funny? I got two 87s. I had one for free and the other one I bought, right? So the one for free, you can assume what kind of shape that one was in, right? And I decided I'll take two and make one. There wasn't enough left of that front air dam proprietary steel scoop that's under the hood, right? That covers between the header panel and the core support. There wasn't enough left of either one of them to make one. They were rusted so bad right there. I'd never seen anything like that in my life. But if you think about it, it was a tray for water. It like leaked right down the hood into that tray and just sat there.
I had mine in like 90. I want to say it was like 92, 93. I had it for 2 years, and I used it when I was doing the nitro thing. I was like bouncing all over the country from car to car, and that Monte SS was my highway jet, man. And that thing was just awesome.
Oh, I'm sure you could get in there and just cruise with it.
I ran from. There was one time I ran from. We had a race in Union Grove, Wisconsin, Saturday night, or was it Friday night? And then Sunday morning we had to run in Cordova.
Oh yeah, it's not too far.
It's like about 150-mile run, right? And I ran it through the corn with the back roads, right? And I ran it through the cornfields, flat out, just flat out the whole way.
I don't doubt it. Yeah,
I have no idea how fast it was going.
Oh, probably a good 120.
You know, but it was like by the time we got out of it, by the time we finished buttoning up the car at the track, it was like the sun was coming up. And it was like, oh shit. You know what I mean?
I got to get to the other place.
Right. You see those first rays of sunshine. I'm like, oh my God. You know, I got to go. Because it was a different car that I was working with. And I ran that car flat out. I went the back. Somebody told me, go this route to this route, this way, and just take it straight through. And I did. And I ran that thing flat out. I made it to the track on time.
I had an 87 Cutlass, right? And I thought they were comparative. They're the same thing, My Cutlass had a 307 Oldsmobile in it, and I put 373 gears in it, and it had originally a 204R transmission. Well, then that thing went tits up, and I'm like, well, what's a broke sailor to do? An E3 in the Navy? I can't afford some 204R, right? So I go grab a turbo 350 out of the junkyard, swap it right in place.
There you go.
No problem. I drove it everywhere, 70 miles an hour, 3,500 RPM, whatever the hell it was running. And man, it still would get 20-something miles a gallon. I was like, wow, what a freaking nice car. But my dad, I took all the computer controlled stuff off of it. He said, don't bring it back. I don't want to see it. He kept having all these electrical problems with the carburetor, with the distributor. Right. I took all that stuff off, put Oldsmobile stuff on from like 78. He said, don't bring the car back, whatever you do. I don't even want to see it. So I'd roll up in the driveway with this thing. He's like, God damn it. So he trades it off for a rod knocking, 70 Buick Electra. And in that car, every time I was home on leave, I'd see that thing go down the road. And you're like, damn, man, there's that Oldsmobile
still on it.
How? I don't know.
Let's see.
Oh, Arthur Fiddler saying those Colonnade cars are looking better and better every day to him.
I always liked them. The only thing I don't like about them is the weight, man. Everything is super freaking heavy on those things.
I tell you what, there was a 73 Buick Century Grand Sport for sale on Marketplace. Did you see that? Oh, it's got the best looking roof line out of all of them. It's like a fastback roof. Oh, it looked good.
The first like repetitive job that I had when I was a kid, right, was Weldon closed the holes for the hinge pins on those things. It was before they came out with the
door weighed like 1,000,000 pounds.
Yeah, it was before they came out with the bushings.
Yeah, and where the bushings and the door would fall.
Yeah.
And it'd be like this giant gaping hole.
Well, that's how I learned how to weld.
Oh, really?
That's how I learned how to weld. Later on, they came out with, I think it was Help on the Help rack. they had the bushings that you drill the hole out and you put the bushing in, right? But I learned how to weld because I had a used car dealer across the street from me, and every one of those cars he'd bring home from the auction, the door was just like this.
Oh my God!
And that's how I learned how to weld, by taking the hinges and welding the holes closed and then re-drilling them so that the pin would fit tight.
You know, we're over 2 hours.
Are we?
We really are.
We are.
Yeah, man, this one went by fast.
We can go a little bit longer. The realist of the real says they look like a couple of fruity Brokeback types. I hope he's talking about us.
That's me. I'm totally fruity.
I am so free. I am so gay. You have no idea. So gay. I can't help myself. I'm silly that way.
I was going to say I'm so fruity. I got banana insides.
He's got bananas inside. I got him outside, and that's why we get along the way we do. Heavyweight 88. Tony, I have what I believe is a lifter tapping noise at part throttle when the engine is warm. This is a newish Ford racing cam and lifter kit. Low quality lifter. Ooh.
Man, if it's new, I would have to bet there's some probably tolerance on those lifters issues.
No, if it's part throttle, see, here's the thing, right? The lifters don't know. The cam and the lifters, the valve train doesn't know where your foot is on the throttle. Okay, so it's either gonna lift, it's either gonna tap, or it's not gonna tap. The only part of the reciprocating the only part of the inside of the engine that is sensitive to foot position is the bottom end. And usually when you get a tapping that's throttle sensitive, so in other words, like it sits there and it's like it doesn't make any noise, and you give it a little bit of gas, part throttle, and then RPM levels out, and then you hear tick, 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 tick. It's generally a piston.
Ooh, like a wrist pin.
Or a rod knock. Yeah, it could be a pin, a broken skirt on a piston, or a rod knock.
Oh, Tony or Dallas, have you ever ran the old school Tiger glass packs? Are they anything special? I use glass packs. I like glass packs. Glass pack used to be the simplest muffler. They used to have one that was like had a header flange on it. You could literally bolt it right on the header, and you didn't have to do your exhaust work. Done.
Let me address this. Smoking wrench. Oil pressure knows where your foot is. Yes, but oil pressure is going up as your foot is, right. So in other words, like if you've got a lifter tick at idle and you give it some foot, RPM comes up, oil pressure comes up, well, the lifter noise should go away. But he's not getting a lifter noise at idle. He's getting a tapping noise at part throttle. So that eliminates the idea of it being oil pressure related.
Anthony Barber, my Barn Find 71 GS 455 has been sitting since 1984, and the original 455 is stuck. Any ideas on getting it to turn? Man, that
an engine has been sitting for almost 40 years.
You need to tear it down. I'll guarantee it's got rust in it.
Yeah.
I took one apart that was like that not too long ago. It was a 67 430. And I kept leaning on that sucker, and I filled it full of mystery oil and the whole 9 yards. And I could not get it to turn. And when I took it apart, the rods were frozen so solid to the piston, which was frozen in the bore, that when I was taking the crank out, you get the crank out of the motor, because I had to take all 8 rods loose, and there was like 2 or 3 of them I got loose, and that is the only way I could get the crank out of the motor. But when I was taking the crank out of the motor, my hammer that I was using to knock the pistons out hit one of the rods, and the rod, which was rusted into place, sung. It hummed
Really?
like a pitchfork. Yeah, and I was like, "Holy crap! That sucker's rusted in there." Half ATF, half mineral spirit. And use a leak down tester. Put compressed air in it overnight. Man, I don't know. I would have to go. That being that long ago, I'm almost certain that thing's got rust in it.
Yeah, honestly, you may free it up, but if it's stuck like that, there's a chance that whole cylinder wall is going to be pitted and everything. So even if you get it free, it's not going to be a happy motor. And I'll tell you what, if it's rusted that bad, you're not going to free the rings in the pistons, right? When once an aluminum piston starts to degrade around a cast iron, ring, they weld themselves together. That is not coming apart. So you can get the motor free, but it's going to run like shit.
So, Mr. Will, you're saying the engine is worth too much. Take it to a machine shop. That has nothing to do with this. He can take that apart at home, and he can get the pistons and rods out of that motor, and that motor would be easily saved. I didn't say that my 430 was junk. I took it apart. I pressed the rods. I pressed the pistons, the pins out of the rods, and then I had the rods resized. But the only parts I didn't reuse was the pistons, the rings. Like Tony was saying, when I got the pistons out, the rings stayed collapsed in the piston. I couldn't even get them out if I wanted to. I'd have to probably break that piston in half to get that ring out.
I have freed, because a lot of times you'll have an engine where the cost of the pistons are ridiculous, right? Or you can't just buy one; you got to buy a whole set. And you'll need one. So I have freed rings like that, but it is a laborious task.
Oh, I've done it. I did it on a 70 455. You can't buy the high compression 455 pistons anymore. It's like they're not easy to come by. So I ended up you get a small screwdriver and you just pick at the ring, and it'll come apart in little 1/4-inch pieces or 1/8-inch pieces if you get it out.
Well, I'll tell you what I've done. Right? What I've done is I've taken a piston. Actually, I think I did a video
about this. In oil?
No. Oh. I think I did a video about this. What I'll do is I'll take the piston and rod assembly, chuck it up in a vise. Okay, so the piston is sitting like this. Then you take a propane torch.
Okay? And heat it.
And you put the propane torch under the piston. Right? You can't use MAP gas or anything like that. It was too hot.
It'll melt the aluminum.
Yeah, but if you use a propane torch, you just put the propane torch under the piston. Okay, and just let it sit there for like 10 or 15 fucking minutes. Get it to where it's just like it's hot, right? The whole thing is just smoking.
Right.
Then you squirt some WD or PV Blast or anything penetrating fluid. You start spraying down the rings with that. Okay, and then you can get, like you said, you can get in there. You find the gap, and you just exploit the gap a little bit. You take a pick, find the gap, exploit the gap, keep the heat going, spray down. Exploit the gap, spray down, exploit the gap. But every time you spray it down, you're cooling the ring,
right?
And then eventually it'll come loose. But I mean, you could spend a good hour or so.
Oh, I spent way more than an hour. But I found, so somebody told me about the oil trick. Put it in oil and let it sit overnight. And then all I did was have a slimy mess that I ended up cutting my fingers on about 10 times. What did work though was screw the oil, put it in training fluid. And I set that sucker in training fluid, and the detergents in the training fluid broke that crap down, that carbon that was in there, right? Broke it down. And you could pick at it, and it would pull 1/4 inch at a time, and then until I was getting like inch-long pieces, or, like you get half a ring. But it took a long time to get it all out.
I have one. I got to show you this piston. I have a 400 piston. I kept at the house. I got at the house that I worked on that thing for hours trying to free. It was one of those things that was just like, look, I gotta win a whole fucking set of, right?
Yeah.
I worked on this thing for hours and I could not get it to budge.
Really?
Yeah.
Uncle Tony, in an all-out motor, would you build it NA or with a power adder? If so, which would you use?
All out to me is blown nitro. That's my background. So yes, I would use a power adder. I would use a called nitromethane, and I would use a power adder called a supercharger. So yeah, so that's my definition of all out, right? But everybody has a different idea of what all out is. I prefer normally aspirated, like for just about everything. I prefer normally aspirated, only because I like the challenge of trying to get horsepower out of the package itself. So it's like this. You have two different philosophies. The one philosophy is, how much power can I make? And when I am in that frame of mind, I say, well, I put a blower on, put nitro in it, and there's the most power you can possibly make. And it is the most power you can possibly make. And the other mindset, and the one that I tend to have the most often, like my default mindset, is, how much power can I make this engine make? I don't care about what it'll make on boost. I don't care what it'll make on nitrous. I don't care. I care about how much can I make from this, device, whatever it happens to be. So that's me. It's either, in my opinion, or for my taste, it's either completely normally aspirated or to the end of the rainbow blown nitro.
So Bruce W is asking, Dallas, what's the weather forecast like for the slanted gnats? I
Looks
didn't
good.
even know. I just looked at it right now.
I checked it today just
Did
to make
ya?
sure. Yeah, it's supposed to be just sunny and partly cloudy.
Oh, okay. Well, it
Yeah,
shows
91.
30% chance of rain.
No, don't tell me that. I don't wanna hear-
Yeah.
There was 0% chance.
Well, and
Yesterday.
here's what's funny. I've been sitting at that track, and it's like I very first race this year. I left my house. It was pouring down rain. We got to the track. It was good all day, the whole day. And Jeffers is weird because it's at the crux of where like the Mississippi meets the Illinois and meets the Ohio River. The weather really just gets pushed around that thing. But 30% chance, that doesn't sound like something that I would even be worried about yet. So I don't usually like I start sweating at anything above 34% and I won't drive for a long distance. So for Sykeston is not really something that I wouldn't even be worried about yet. What's the location in Sykeston?
Sykeston, Missouri.
It's the southeast boot heel of Missouri.
Bruce W. Dallas, how did you and Tony meet up? It was a dating app, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was full of bananas and he had bananas.
And I had bananas. And yeah. Anthony Perna, Tony Dallas. I met a guy who built motors back in the 60s and he used to send the cranks out to be chromed. He said it sheds oil better and makes the crank better all the way around. Is that BS? No, that's the
really
best
works.
way.
Yeah.
Right? All out cranks are chromed. So they would use nitriding or tough driding, which only surface hardens about 1,000 of an inch, 2,000 of an inch on like factory performance, or actually all factory crankshafts up until like about the 1980s, and they just totally run on plain metal. And then the next step beyond that is chrome, and the hard chrome, the journals. And yes, that is the best way to do it.
Yeah, like chrome plated Dakota, just like like chrome plated.
Now, here's an interesting thing for people building big block Mopars. Actually, probably big block Chevys too, right? Or any engine that has a relative that's all out. Okay, so meaning that like blown alcohol, blown nitro, supercharged or nitrous or high output turbo. You can buy cracked cranks. Okay, so here's the deal with this, right? And I'm going to use the Chrysler as an example. A stroker crank from a top fuel motor, right, will fit directly into a wedge block, a 440 block, okay, without really any modifications. So you can buy cranks that are cracked, okay, and you get them dirt cheap, like $100, $200, right? Here's how this works now, right? When a hard chrome crank is exposed to crazy stresses, the chrome will crack in the radius, okay? So if you look at the inside part, okay, so picture you got your rod journal, okay? And then you got the cheek. So here's the rod journal, okay? And here's the cheek of the crank, and then here's the main, okay? So if you look right in this area right here, you'll see a crack that runs in the radius, okay? Now, if that crack is jagged, right? Meaning that you look at the crank, you look at that crack and you see a jagged line, okay? That crank is fine. There's nothing wrong with that crank. The crack is in the chrome, okay? It's not in the crank itself. You can buy those, so you can run them forever, right? We ran them in the top fuel car. We get cracked cranks all the time. Throw it right in. If you look at a crank that's been fractured by, so the crank itself is cracked. If you look in that area right there, you'll see a straight crack. If you see a straight crack, throw it away, because that stress is from the inside part of the crank working its way out. So if you come across a hard chrome crank, and you see a jagged crack, crank is good to go. Send it. If you take it apart and you see that it's got a straight crack, it's junk.
If you want to see like a work of art, when you talk crankshafts, most of you guys think about stuff on that, like I normally think of, is out of a regular production engine crankshaft. Go look up like Winberg crankshafts. right? That's like a work of art. Crowler cranks. So I was going to answer this right here. Now, so Bruce W is still asking, how do you guys really know each other? Tony came over and heard about some stuff I was doing with Buicks, and then you came over and looked at my Buick stuff, and you thought it was pretty amazing.
Yeah, he was about 10 miles from me. Audi Draper, 3/8 or 1/2-inch pipe for oil tube. A 1/2 inch is going to get you more,
Oil tube. Oh man, definitely go with a 1/2-inch. If you can get a 1/2-inch, do the 1/2-inch. 3/8 is too small.
Well, 3/8 is the standard size for almost all of like the big black ball parts and all that.
The oil feed line is 3/8 inch.
Yeah, and then
for maybe the
pipe,
the tube, the
thread.
pipe.
Yeah.
Oh, the thread. Yeah.
And then the Hemi is 1/2-inch. Bob Bump, chrome-plated stress parts, hydrogen embrittlement. Anyone? I mean, people have been chroming crankshafts since the beginning of time. All right, I think we're gonna call it a. Oh wow, 220. Scott Malpass, the Junkyard 360. You didn't care about mileage? No, it's gonna get rebuilt. Now, if you're rebuilding an engine, right, the higher the mileage, the better.
Seasoned block.
The block becomes seasoned. So yeah, if you're rebuilding an engine, you're going to build it. Let's say for racing, an engine with a million miles on it is better than an engine that just came right off the. You know what I mean? Because it's seasoned. It's all of the stresses are worked out of the metal, and you can machine it, and it'll stay wherever you machine it.
Yeah, that's what a lot of guys don't think of. Like a high mileage motor is not that bad of a motor to use for racing. That's why they used to actually look for really high mileage motors that have been abused.
Well, if you go to any back in the day, I don't know if it's like that anymore. But if you go back in the day, like you go to like a machine shop, like Midsor Machine at Brooklyn, right? They always had an area in the back where they just had engine blocks. They were just like there's stacks of engine blocks outside, right? And they did that specifically to season the block. They'd let them get rusty. They'd let them get rained on. The sun would beat on them. They'd freeze over the winter. And they would leave those blocks out there for years.
There used to be guys like stories of guys throwing them in the bed of a truck, just leave them back there.
Yep. And that's how a high-end race builder, that's how they would season their blocks. Taxi cab motors were very sought after.
And a lot of that really, guys, is not that it's like been abused or anything like that. The heat cycles in them, it allows it to relieve the stress of the block. Right. And so then the block will sit in its natural state. Then you can machine that block and it's not going to move. It's already, consider it like all right. So when they make the block, it's so hot when they cast it that it just settles out based on the weight of where it's at. Right. It may not be straight. It may not be perfect. And then they machine it. And then when it goes through all those heat cycles, then it's leveled out. Right. So it vibrates the molecules in alignment from the engine running. There's a lot to it.
All right, guys. I think we're gonna call it a night. I can't talk anymore.
It's been a long one.
It has. Guys, listen, all of our mods, right? Thank Ari, John, Zero, Fubar, the best in the business. Thank you so much. Everybody who contributed Super Chat, thank you so much. It's what pays the bills, keeps the wheels turning, keeps the projects going. Thank you.
The lights on.
You keep the lights on. AHRA Drag Racing History Channel. Dallas, we got a couple of different videos up there now.
Yep, we do. We have the Evolution of Funny Car, which is in 2 parts. So it's me, Tony, and Steve Magnante. That's the most current one. But we also got the Gassers. We got Slingshot Dragsters.
We're building up the repertoire.
The repertoire, right? Yep. And don't forget this Sunday, Slanted National, Sykeston, Missouri, Jeffers Motorsports Park. Gates open at 10.
and you join the AHRA All Hot Rods Allowed, right? And Dallas, what are you doing this week? You're inseminating the livestock. If you've got livestock, you've got cows, pigs, goats, anything like that. Dallas will come to your place and he will inseminate whatever you need inseminated.
Using your animals to inseminate it, though.
Yeah, he'll direct. None
of that weird crap.
Right. No weirdness. No weirdness. Okay. So yeah, never any weirdness.
Do a Socks and Martin video. To tell you the truth, our next video is probably going to be the Golden Commandos.
Thank you.
It's probably going to be the Golden Commandos with a guy named Jim Hall, who was the driver for the Golden Commandos.
Let's see Tim Leary's super blown head. Okay, so I got to tell you a quick Timothy Leary story right before I wrap this up. Okay, so this is Murfreesboro, Tennessee. So help me, you can't make this shit up. All right, you can't make this shit up. So sometime back in around 1967, 1968, Timothy Leary came here and spent a couple of weeks in Murfreesboro. And at the time, it was a much smaller town. So there was a place called Davis Market on Main Street. It's right on the corner. Now it's like a Spanish bodega, right? But back then, it was like the super. It was like just a general market. It was called Davis Market, and it's on the corner of Middle Tennessee Boulevard and Main Street. Okay, and Timothy Leary he decided that was the center of the universe. That Davis Market was the center of the universe. And now, if you went into Davis Market and drank a beer, you could never leave Murfreesboro. You would always come back to Murfreesboro. So the tradition when I first moved here was, if you're going to stay, you had to go to Davis Market. You had to buy a beer and drink the beer in Davis Market, which you could do then. It was a little bit different. It was like much more relaxed than it is now. It's 20 years ago. So yeah, that was the tradition. If you moved to Tennessee, you moved to Murfreesboro, you had to go to Davis Market and drink a beer because Timothy Leary decided that was the center of the universe. Now, if you wanted to leave Murfreesboro, you had to go across the street to MTSU, and there's a monument. There's a monument thing across the street at MTSU, and you had to piss on the monument. So if you wanted to leave Murfreesboro and not be sucked into the center of the universe, you had to go across the street from Davis Market to the monument and piss on the monument, and then you could leave and be able to, not have to come back. So that is the legend of Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and Timothy Leary.
Okay.
No, I never pissed on the monument. This is my home, and I love it more than you have any idea. And that's it, guys. We're out of here. Tomorrow night, the Junkyard Jet Crew. Saturday night, Matt Happel from Sloppy Mechanics.
He's not going to be there.
No, Friday.
Oh, Saturday, yeah.
Saturday, 7 o'clock, Matt Happel, Sloppy Mechanics. And then Sunday, our regular show after the
Slanted
Nationals. Oh, man, I don't have time for any of this stuff. Where do I find the time?
And then we're going to do another live or a HRA Drag Racing History Channel video.
Yes, and we're going to do that too. I do too. I'm out of here. Good night, guys. We love you. Thank you.
All right. See you later.